Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. How do US veterans feel today? I am a former Marine, and I want to do Marine things to defend the Constitution from the alt-right and disgusting elites who are on that island and only have power because they're 100 times more united than the left. I swore my oath between September 11th and the invasion of Iraq. I was shamed and angry when the WMD justification fell apart and the occupation was handled badly. As a result, I was extremely jaded about this country for a number of years afterwards. The feelings of rage, shame, and disappointment I have now about my government and many of my fellow citizens is orders of magnitude more intense than back in 03 through 05, and I'm an older, much more mellow person than I was when I was young. I'm a veteran and father of 2 mixed teenagers and a highly autistic 5-year-old. I'm in Colorado and I'm teed off, and I really hope that the military will hold up this oath. I watched all videos today, including Alex's video from work. I have plans. I'll be talking to people I trust and build a communication network offline. I'm also a bit scared. I'm really not feeling good. On the fence between stick it out or be one of the good ones for as long as possible, or quit so that I can fight harder from the outside. From a veteran, please stick it out. I regularly wish I was still enlisted so I could take a stand. We need good men and women in uniform willing to stand up and say, "No, sir, that's an unlawful order." I took an oath to defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. I stand by that oath today. I'm saddened to see so many spineless cowards serving in positions of leadership. There really is no leadership today. Just a bunch of pigs worried about their re-election coffers. Unit, corpse, God, country, never was it one man above all else. Fricking cowards. As an Iraq war vet that was part of the invasion force in 2003, I'm more disgusted than I was then. Yeah, I came out of the Marines in 2005 as a full-fledged leftist. I don't know how you can serve 4 years and still support the fascist military-industrial complex. Well, it's good to know that the propaganda machine in the US Armed Forces isn't completely overwhelming, and that some people come out the other side with opposing views. I know a lot of people in the UK Armed Forces who say there's a pretty relentless torrent of anti-left messaging while you're in there. I imagined the US was more or less the same. Betrayed, ashamed, motivated, very motivated. I am disgusted. I served on active duty for over 20 years. Then, in the Fleet Reserve for another 10. I started my active duty in June of 1976, and on our country's bicentennial celebration, I was in boot camp. Now, coming up on 50 years later, I feel like this isn't the country I swore an oath to protect and defend. Instead, it's been usurped by unprincipled and corrupt men and women who seek only to protect their terrible figurehead of a leader and his rotten-to-the-core administration. Even in the worst days of Watergate, I never thought America's government would fall this far, this fast. It's really bloody puzzling to everyone. I was born in 1969, Australian, artillery in my youth, exercises with the US Marine Corps sometimes, and it bloody stuns me to realise you've got a genuinely fascist government there. They're dumb pricks, as are their moronic water carriers. They'll fail. I feel like the military I served no longer exists. I'm saddened, mostly. I mean, the one I served was fairly crappy, but this is another level for sure. I will maintain my oath. As the government turns its back on the Constitution more and more, I'll not follow. I remember the promise of the American dream, and I will not be a pawn to pushing it back. Okay, I'm getting some replies, so I want to make it clear on what will be done. I will only advocate for legal means, being involved in your community, attending protests and being an observer and recording. Exercising my rights, you see. Doing my best to inform others without alienating them so the effort can grow. Making my voice heard by my representative at a local, state, and federal level. I will reject illegal and unconstitutional orders, and I will whistleblow if anything around me occurs. If you're looking for someone to make a different statement on a public social media, then it shouldn't happen. That's the key part people forget. The oath isn't to a party, a person, or a moment in time, it's to the Constitution itself. Loyalty to principles over power is literally the whole point. Let me tell you, I'm foaming at the mouth. I've been anti-Trump from day one. I couldn't believe all of the vets who voted for him after all the disrespect he tossed our way. I've been trying to rally people, but everyone is in a daze. It's like reprogramming a cult member. Most have lived the majority of a decade within a bubble of messaging that reinforced their beliefs, and that's literally all they know. For some, even having a doubt about their beliefs causes a ton of fear and discomfort, because their entire worldview is based on maintaining those beliefs. The media and messaging consultants who ran Trump's campaigns are world-class manipulators after all, and the psychology and symbolism behind their messaging is designed to appeal to the very heart of the conservative belief system. Well, I'll keep my thoughts brief. I'm incredibly fricking angry. I'm no longer technically under oath, but I stand by the words I stated, and I'm ashamed of this country. As an attorney, I feel like all of those years studying constitutional laws was wasted. I'm taking this personally. I can't imagine what it's like being an attorney, studying and learning to respect the law, and then seeing what this Supreme Court is doing. How does anyone in law school these days believe what they're being taught? I mean, those years aren't wasted. Someday in the future, constitutional scholars will be needed to prosecute this regime and its enablers, because everyone in America is entitled to due process. Are they not? Don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, once we have it back, needless to say. I mean, look no further than outside. Veterans are marching in DC. Veterans are getting killed in the streets too. And the ICU nurses who would otherwise treat those veterans are also getting shot. Important point of order here. Veterans are also scared. Senator Mark Kelly can afford a pay cut. Most disabled vets would be on the street if their disability were cut off. I don't think this admin having the VA reevaluate protesting veterans' disability in retribution is far-fetched, to be honest. Let me be as succinct as that other guy. Livid. Alex Pretty, the person that ICE murdered Saturday, was an ICU, an intensive care unit nurse, at a veterans hospital. He's probably helped save the lives of several members or ex-members of the military while working in the ICU. Trump's ICE murdered him while he was helping a woman that ICE was just blatantly assaulting. He didn't threaten them. Pretty has done more for the military than Trump ever will. Trump even insulted the military by calling them losers and suckers. Instead of honoring soldiers, he belittled them because he could never be like one of them. Most non-active and retired US Marines I know seem to be disproportionately against T-Rump. Like every Marine I know is just waiting for the green light. My buddy from high school was a Marine colonel in Afghanistan and then a big city vice cop for 20 years. He was the best and smartest critic on my Facebook feed of the fascist draft dodger during the first term, and he fought total internet hell against a second term. We lost, and then he lost. By his own hand? I'm not sure. But he hated seeing everything he had fought for and truly believed in be so easily diminished by a man with such low character. He was, of course, a total baddie. We used to take random realtor houses for sale signs and switch houses for sale. One night we even put the town police station up for sale. Rest in peace, Colonel. I'm not doing great. I enlisted during the Obama admin and re-enlisted during the Biden admin. So, yeah, not great. I feel like I'm the only sane one nowadays. I'm angry and embarrassed. My unit is full of white and male maggots who say, "Hell yeah!" to everything Trump and his goons spout out. So I obviously keep my mouth shut. Also, where are those files he campaigned on? Veteran here, I don't have words for how wrong this is. I'm furious, and I feel the urge to do something significant. I feel like I'm surrounded by a bunch of people who'd want me dead if they knew how I felt about this. And a bunch of others who feel like I do, but can't say anything yet. All I can do is make sure I'm doing the right thing and protecting my chain from doing anything unethical. Australian here, where are all your don't tread on me warriors now? Because from the outside it kinda looks like they all signed up to become the boots they said they'd always fight against. I am burning with the fury of 7 suns. Active duty here. I feel numb. As an enlisted member, there's really nothing that I can control or stand against in this. Fellow veteran here. When it's time, the right answer is to cross the line. An unlawful order is just that. Consciousness objection. The soldier who takes the first step is the most scared. But the people trust in you to protect them when no one else will. It's terrifying, but imagine how your countrymen feel staring at you. The listing of the oath puts the people and the Constitution before the president and officers. As usual with any political videos, I have to clarify that this video is written in late February 2026. And these things are just so very prone to changing. Maybe things will have gotten better or worse in the few months between now and the video releasing, vetoes or crackdowns will have occurred, and as usual, those complaining about there being too many liberal topics here, you should blame the political situation for flooding Reddit with these topics to begin with, because we were not getting this many online discussions about the fall of democracy in the preceding administration. The short answer? Angry and upset. I've blocked out a whole side of my family from my life and my own family's life due to Trump. I watched a video today of a man my age getting shot down defending a woman attacked by masked psychos that have to LARP as cops because they're too stupid to go through a police academy. That same man worked at a VA hospital in an ICU providing for brothers and sisters that served this country like I did. That man had a concealed weapon and a right to have it. Never brandished it. They massacred him for the sport of it. I carry almost daily. I've been a law-abiding citizen and I've got the proper license for it. If I protest, do I deserve the same treatment? Do my kids get to turn on the TV and see their dad labeled a violent terror fighter? I teach in a school in California where we have a dual immersion program. My daughter may be white, but she's been in the school her whole life and learned fluent Spanish with kids who came to our school only speaking Spanish. We have students scared of ICE coming, 1st through 6th graders mortified they might be taken away with their parents. If ICE came to our school, I fear I'll probably be killed for however I react in those moments. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? American citizens being murdered. Where are those files? My first husband was a medic in Vietnam. He's been dead for about 5 years and was a committed Vietnam vet for peace. I had an imaginary convo with him today while I was cooking. Ooh, to be a fly on the wall of the upper echelons of the military brass must be so interesting right now. One wonders what whispers are being talked about if this escalation continues. Remember your oath. That really hit different today. Let me tell you, I'm getting ready to do it again, even though I'm a busted-up old-timer. Angry, sick, sad. Everything is going to crap. We have 3 more years of this unless our elected officials start caring about democracy more than loyalty to orange fascist baboon. I'm not the least bit optimistic, by the way. Furious, disgusted, and desperate, I'm keeping my eyes open and waiting for the opportunity to make a difference. I won't throw my life away, but when the time comes that I can put my thumb on the scale in the right direction, I will. The oath felt almost symbolic when I joined. It sure doesn't now. Just a reminder, this is an oath taken by all federal employees, not just the armed services. And in many states, it's all government employees. Every librarian, every clerk, health inspectors, road maintenance crews, kindergarten teachers, social workers, data analysts, bus drivers, and janitors. We're all responsible for defending our Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Being unarmed is no excuse. Defend the Constitution in whatever capacity you have, with your words, your actions, and your refusal to cooperate. Angry, tired, sick to my stomach, I raised my right hand because I loved my country and wanted to make a difference, and seeing my country become this hurts. I'm real angry, you guys. My mum's family first came over as settlers on the Mayflower to Plymouth, and some to Jamestown. We can show proof of at least one member of our family participating in every single conflict, with the exception of one because a museum lost family documents, and we've always been on the right side of history. Read that as fought for American independence and again in 1812, had a great-grandfather act as a total baddie secret agent for the Union during the Civil War, fought on European and Pacific fronts against tyranny during World War II, and a bunch more. My cousins and I have been raised to respect the US Constitution. We were taught to have empathy and to help others. Taught to believe a good government takes care of its people, and the people get to have a say in how that government is run. This is not the America I was taught to fight for. I'm literally embarrassed to say I'm a veteran. I fought for this country and still 100% believe in the Constitution. I just no longer believe in America. That's deep. What a history y'all have, and honestly, should be very proud. I just learned about the Boston Tea Party and the Revolutionary War for the first time in depth the other day, and yeah, foreign enemies, sure, but I don't think America has faced this extreme an amount of domestic enemies before, per se, to this scale. So yeah, we're all definitely at a turning point in history. What do we do? Rally? Rebel? Black Panthers seem the only ones via media to be outwardly banding, but I see no one else on the surface strategizing. We'll see if history repeats itself once more about not taking it anymore to such a degree, coming from a kid whose dad served as a Marine vet. The only thing that is missing is organization. Reading this is just making me feel better tonight. It's nice knowing that there are American service people who are just as livid as the rest of us right now. Solidarity to anyone who's finally broken the veil that this president or administration ever cared about Americans, our country, or any of our service members. I just hope that there are more of you. What I swore an oath to doesn't exist anymore. America's an idea. It's just been hijacked by con men and professional manipulators. My stepson is in the National Guard and we live 5 hours away. He keeps talking about wanting to get deployed, except he supports ICE. He believes all of that crap. It pains me to say this because I've been his stepdad for years, but he disgusts me now. I can't look past how he's interpreting all of this, and it's making me realize that I might not be able to continue being a part of this family. His mother also thinks he's got his stuff backwards, but he's her kid. I don't want to come between them, but I think I'm going to have to leave sooner rather than later, and it just frickin' sucks. I think I'll be going up to Minneapolis the next chance I get. Sorry for the unwanted rant, but I've been needing to get this off my chest, and this seems like a decent place. And it would be one thing if it was just an opinion. I'm all for people having different opinions. But this isn't just a difference of opinion. This is so much worse than that. This isn't okay. This is fascism. This is a fundamental flaw in the core of his being. I can't, man. If that makes me a piece of crap deadbeat stepdad, then so be it. But I can't be okay with that. My mother raised me better than that. There are a lot of things that I want to say, however, due to fear of being identified and punished for said certain things, I'll keep it short. I'm disgusted, angry, and upset that the country and service that has provided so much for me is essentially gone. I'm no longer proud to say I'm American and can't even disagree with non-Americans that we're a garbage nation. I'm also stationed overseas, so it's embarrassing going out in public outside the local area, like an hour or so away from work. Well, we have domestic adjutants in the White House, Maine National Guard called up to protect citizens, we have a whole administration that's broken their oaths, lied at confirmation hearings, but here we sit, no ability to take action against things that are very actionable. I'm feeling like it's about time we start defending against domestic enemies, to be honest. I'm a veteran who deployed multiple times. Today was the most shame I've ever felt as an American. Okay, the narrator hadn't realized at the beginning that this question was generated the day Alex Pretty stepped out to help that woman in Minnesota. That explains a lot of the sentiment of anger at a specific event. I feel like that footage is going to be very important in the future. I was very Trump and Republican, but after this horse crap, I'm so done. I can't believe I supported this. I feel beyond ashamed, especially after today. Sick to my stomach seeing that happen to someone in the streets today. There's no excuse. America has turned into an absolute crapshoot. Okay, update. I'm getting a lot of comments and I want to clear the air. I voted for that guy in 2016, 2020, and 2024, and my family are major donors. I can no longer support what's happening, and I'm beyond angered by what's just happened in Minneapolis. I hope people realize that this isn't a black and white or Republican and Democrat issue, this is a freedom issue. I need us to wake up and take action. I will be at the next Dallas protests. I feel threatened and outnumbered. I served on active deployment in the Navy and live in Minneapolis now. ICE is the domestic part. If it helps, I know quite a few folks on the right that have been coming around on this. There's a lot more work to do, but a small part of me hopes this is the tipping point. I'll protest until I hear so. I'm absolutely disgusted. More than ever, I'm compelled to support and defend the Constitution against our enemies. I just can't believe our own people and government are the true threat to our democracy. I can't believe this is where we are. I retired in 2016, just as Trump was starting to gain traction, and I'm so glad that that traitorous piece of garbage didn't sign my retirement papers or anything else. My parents and siblings parade my awards and accomplishments as if they earned them, yet they make me feel like I'm crazy and un-American because I oppose Trump and his fascist regime. I feel like I'm surrounded by domestic enemies and they're running the show. My dad said if it weren't for the fact that he needs to fix our plumbing, he'd be on his way to Minnesota right now. So I'd say he's pretty teed off. Navy vet. I wouldn't be surprised if he plans a road trip after it's squared away. I've been warning people about all of this since the orange turd's first term. Nobody listened. Oh, and I should add, I am very angry. I took that oath seriously, and to watch these untrained stormtroopers killing and kidnapping makes me very angry. How am I doing? Bad. It's a rough time to be a real patriot. We're destroying everything we're meant to stand for. I was in the Peace Corps, and I had to swear this oath, and I did so with heartfelt glee. I do defend and support the Constitution today, and I do wish the current regime would do the same or something just even close. Sadness. True sadness. The military I was in the 80s and 90s just can't be the same. Those aren't just words you speak a pledge to. Where's the hope for making things better? Corruption and greed, anger, hostility. It just makes me very sad that my grandchildren won't see our country for what it was and what it stood for, once upon a time. Like crap. 35 years of service, all for this. A deep well of depression and a paralyzing amount of expectation, like a deer staring at headlights for 10 frickin' years, while all the other deer pretended to support them for their service while keeping them blocked into this road awaiting the frickin' Buick station wagon.
Where do you draw the line with charity? I was in Chicago a few years ago with my husband, my daughter, and her fiancé. We went to Giordano's for pizza. Anyway, we ordered way too much food, and the pizza, when it arrived, was like 2 inches thick. We'd had so many starters that we could only eat one piece each of the 2 pizzas, so we got to-go boxes. As we were walking along, this woman came up and told us she was really hungry, and could we help her out giving her some money? Well, we didn't have any cash on us, but we did have this still warm pizza. We offered her one of the to-go boxes, but she got all insulted and told us she didn't want our goddamn pizza. She wanted money. We told her to F off and went and found a homeless guy who was more than happy to take our pizza and thanked us profusely while enjoying a slice. Yeah, I've met homeless people who get all indignant because I offered them something besides money. I've met homeless people who I have given money and they have the audacity then to turn around and say, give me more. I'm also surprised this person is all like, and the pizza was 2 inches thick. And it's like, yeah, isn't that the whole thing with Chicago pizza? It's thick. I was in a bicycle shop getting a repair done and some lady in her 20s came up to me and asked me to buy her a bike. I am not very prosperous looking, so I cannot imagine what she was thinking. She was early 20s with a European accent. I thought she might be Dutch or Danish, but I'm not knowledgeable about those things. She looked more like a traveler than a tourist, and she just made a little small talk about the bikes and how expensive they were, and then quite seriously asked me to buy her one. She seemed used to the idea that others would take care of her. I can be very dense about it when a girl is flirting with me, but I don't think that is what was up. After she wandered off, one of the guys asked if she was bothering me and I said no, so I imagine she was creating other issues. Bloody hell, the cheek on that one! I was at work a while back at a major retailer in the Deep South. I had a gentleman come in and ask me about a laptop. The laptop cost $899. I explained the specs, gave him a lowdown on the warranty, etc. He let me wrap up my spiel and looked me dead in the eye and said, I'll give you $400 for it. This happens a lot, so I patiently informed him that this was impossible for me to do and I do not designate prices. He looked at me and said, well, you just lost yourself a computer sale, and left. I wish it ended there. I got off and was walking to my car, and as I got there, a truck comes flying into the parking lot, and it's the same gentleman as before. He whips into the parking spot next to mine and gets out. My metaphorical hackles were raised because this guy was driving so aggressively. He gets out and slams his door and walks over to me. He looks at me and says, you'll sell that laptop to me for $300 or I'm going to get you fired for racism. I answered him and just said, sir, I have no idea what you are and I have no intention of selling you anything at all. I'm not even on the clock. If you have an issue, go into the store and ask for a manager. He swore explosively that his intimidation factor didn't work and went into the store. I drove home and forgot about it. I get to work the next day and find out he was arrested for trying to steal the shelf display. Feels good, man. I never want to work in retail and have to deal with some goddamn psychopath trying to get me to bring down prices that I have no right to. I found a wallet with $200 and several gift cards in it while I was at work one day. It was a Yu-Gi-Oh wallet, so I figured some kid lost his B-Day money. I turned it into the service desk and forgot about it. 30 days later, no one had claimed it, so I got to keep it. I was telling my friend about my good luck, and a friend of hers, not a friend of mine, says, you should give me $20. I asked her why. 'Cause I never punched you in the face for all those times you were a female dog to me. It should be noted that I have always been kind to this extremely unpleasant girl, even when she was squatting my living room for several weeks. Well, goddamn, I guess it's just an unpleasant fact that some hoes be like that. Life moves on. Congratulations on your brand new Yu-Gi-Oh wallet, son. I gave this guy a free hot dog and he took it and threw it on the ground and said he wouldn't be a part of my system. He told me that he didn't need my charity because he was an adult. The man made his choice. He refuted the hot dog of charity and now he will suffer for it with an empty tummy. I've helped out a mother trying to buy a pizza dinner for her 3 kids. They looked really hungry and the mom was short maybe $10. She was frantically looking around in her purse and pockets trying to come up with the cash. I gave her a 20 and told her to buy some breadsticks and sodas too. Her look of gratitude is something I'll never forget. On the other hand, I was once in some clothing store with my girlfriend. I don't remember which one. They all kind of blend together in my mind when a teenage girl walked up to me and demanded $10 so she could buy some lipstick. I refused, so she ran to her mother, who basically chewed me out for refusing her precious baby. So basically, I won't give any charity to entitled buttholes. First of all, yes, my friend, that is the way to go. And second of all, who the hell are these entitled people who just walk up, demand money, and then their parents are just as entitled and expect you to buy things for their child? If someone genuinely needs help, I'm willing to give it. If they think I should be obligated to give them my time and money because of arbitrary reason I don't necessarily agree with, they can go suck a bag of ducks. They didn't actually say ducks. I remember about 10 years ago, I had just moved to a new city for college, and I was definitely a starving student. I had a budget of $40 a week for food and transportation, and that was it. Anyway, one evening I'm walking from class to the bus stop, and I see a kid sitting in an alcove begging passers-by for money. A few things. He had a nice bike, new shoes, I hadn't either, and expensive sunglasses. So he sees me and asks if I can spare some change. Feeling charitable, I reach into my wallet, and I see that I have $22. 2 singles and 20. I take out the 2 singles and pass them to him and he says, "Oh, you aren't giving me the 20? At which point I took the 2 singles back, stuck them in my wallet, pocketed it, and walked off while this moochy butthole says something akin to, "Come on, that's not cool. Can I please have the $2? Beggars can't be choosers has never felt more appropriate. See, that's a good example of where, you draw the line. But a lot of the stories I'm seeing here, and probably not reading because, the topic at hand in the video title and stuff, it's about where you draw the line, But loads of people here are just trying to virtue signal, it seems. One time there was a kid at McDonald's who was lost and couldn't find his mother at a food court in a mall, so it wasn't like middle of the city. He was really hungry and asked me for some food, so I bought him some of the cheaper items because I'm a pretty poor teenager. After I bought him some food, he started yelling at me because I bought him cheap food. He said his mom would have brought him a Big Mac. At that point, I took his food and brought the child to the mall security and let his mom get him some food after she recovered him. The angel and devil sitting on his shoulder.
Abandon the child. He is a lost cause.
Do not blame the child. It is the parents' fault that they are such a spoiled little B-word. I was checking out of a Walgreens and a man with a lot of what looked like skin cancer approached the register. He asked the manager if he was a veteran. The manager was, so he asked to speak privately with him. I couldn't hear much, but he was asking for money. Manager turns him down as I am walking out of the store. Man tracks me down on my way to the car and gives me a sob story about being a war veteran with skin cancer and he needs money to go to the VA. I asked him for proof that he was a veteran and he didn't have any, of course, so I said I could not help him. After pressing me for money aggressively, he started cursing me and rolled his eyes and walked away. I posted this on Reddit a while ago and an actual veteran advised me that they carry some special form on them at all times. He said it's more important than a birth certificate to them. I can't believe a guy that had the audacity to cuss me out when he's the one impersonating a veteran for money. See, that is the thing. It is why I am frankly so skeptical about helping a lot of people because many people in the world have actually forgone their moral fiber and integrity in turn for making money. And they don't care about you, they don't care about anyone else, they just want money. Just for the skin cancer alone, I probably would have given them change or whatever to take the bus wherever they need to get to. My boyfriend worked at a gas station for a few years. Apparently, nothing hardens your heart to charity cases quite like it. I was with him once when a man was trying to bum money, then offered to sell us clothes from his car, all about the size for tween-age kids, and then started yelling at us. Meanwhile, there are about 15 other people he could have harassed there. If you didn't expect to run out of gas, why do you have clothes to sell that aren't boxed or even look remotely like you run a shop? I have a little bit more respect for someone who's actively trying to offload some bullcrap on me or sell me something in exchange for money. Even if they offer me something that I genuinely have little to no value in whatsoever and don't want, I still respect it a little more than someone just being like, hey, you, give me some money. At a gas station off the interstate, this guy came up to me and asked for gas money. I gave him $5. He walked straight over to his late model Cadillac and drove off. Several layers of WTF later, I no longer give strangers money for gas. Okay, here's the thing. If they actually straight up walked off with my $5 and then just drove off, I'd be annoyed. If they filled up their car, that's whatever, because I don't really consider cars to be a status of wealth anymore. Because in some cases, what that should tell you is that this person is kind of stupid and bad with their money because they decided to go with a really nice expensive car that is actually outside of their means. Because here's the thing, once you buy a car, your hand is pretty much on your wallet at all times to make sure that you can keep it maintained. Which is personally why I choose to bicycle everywhere like Kentaro Oe, the golden boy. If you know what I'm talking about, you're a legend. I was eating with my family at an outdoor restaurant in Vancouver. We got the bread, water, and appetizers, and then a homeless guy walked up and without asking, took the bread off our table, ate some, and then walked away. Dude, if you had asked, we would have given it to you. Something about the idea of someone stealing my food makes me angrier than stealing my money, and I probably would have kicked off right there and then. I'll pay for a bus fare for someone. A few times people have been short of change, and one time this guy was incredibly hungover, had somehow got to Swindon from London, and his friends had buggered off. I figured a bus fare was a bit of kindness to someone feeling rough, and he was so thankful to get to a town and to some tourist information and a cash point. However, if you're homeless and you sit next to an ATM and stare at me like I'm the devil, you get nothing. Whilst I might have more money than you at the moment, I am in fact a student and I do need that £5 for food, okay? I think that's absolutely fair. Just because you have less than me doesn't mean you're entitled to my things or my money or whatever, and it doesn't mean that I'm obligated to give you anything. Charity's only charity after all if you do it of your own volition. On Oxford Street in London, there's this one homeless dude who sits next to the ATM. He always asks me for change. I don't get it. I obviously don't have change. That's why I'm at the ATM. What does he think I'm going to give him? A 20? I wouldn't mind if he didn't kiss his teeth and spit whenever I politely apologize. Passive-aggressive stuff like that just gets under my goddamn skin. Where does charity end and entitlement begin? When we start, continue to enable these people by not helping them out of their own situation. Simply giving someone money does not solve the problem. It merely delays it. Give a man a fish and he will eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he will eat for life. This is a very good proverb which should be thought of when restructuring our forever flawed welfare system. Simply throwing money at people and keeping them content does nothing for our society in the long run. Sure, you can feel good about yourself because you advocated for this, but ultimately, you're only making it worse. We need to implement employment programs, skills and training, education, goals that need to be met in order to continue to receive government assistance. If you're going to get this check, you need to maintain a score of X on these following things. We will help you along the way, but in the meantime, there needs to be a give and take. If you don't have a job, you can still work for money you are getting. This raises self-esteem, makes the person feel better about themselves, etc. There is no initiative with our current system. It is broken. I'm going to be serious about this a minute because this is a pretty divisive topic when you get down to it on a national level like this, talking about the welfare state, which I'm just going to make it very clear. I highly value the welfare state, but I also believe in equivalent exchange and that you should work for what you get. I used to love shopping at 3 or 4 a.m. when I lived in Austin. My favorite store was the Heb at Brody and WM. Cannon. It was huge and empty except for the stalkers and a cashier. Loved it. And then I actually had someone try to scam me. Had he asked for a little cash, that would have been one thing. But when he acted like he knew me from a mutual job, I got the creeps. I verified for myself that I had no freaking idea who this guy was by naming off a place I'd never worked from a time when I lived in Houston, and he ate it up, acting excited at our reunion, then giving me a sob story about his kids being unemployed and that they had no money for food. So I said I didn't have cash. He said that was fine, that I could just buy groceries with my card. I decided to give him a semi-true sob story of my own about how sick my retired cop husband had been and that I barely had enough for our groceries and had to borrow from my parents to buy his prescription. I think I managed a tear or two. I said it was just great to see him. We exchanged goodbyes and I made a beeline for the checkout and made them rouse the manager from the office. It thrilled me to no end to discover that they knew about this man and his scam. He had been told told he wasn't allowed in the store, but they just didn't have the manpower to watch the entrance every night. I went on with my shopping, bought my stuff, made them get the manager again, and made him walk me to my car. And that was the end of my love affair with 3 a.m. grocery shopping. I too once loved going to a shop real early in the morning, but sadly that place was so wrought with crime at that time that they decided to shut at regular times. This will probably get buried, but here it is. As a rule, me, my husband, his brother, we all give money to people on the streets. My husband and I never have lots of money, but it is what it is. My brother-in-law, on the other hand, is truly awful with money and hates having it, so he generally will give $10 or a $20 bill to whoever asks for it at the right time. Well, fast forward a week after he gave some homeless dude about $5 to $10 on his way home from work, he and my husband are walking around downtown, and this homeless guy starts to call out to him. He kinda just waves him off because he's in a bad mood and has no money, and just doesn't want to be bothered. The homeless dude comes running up to him yelling, "Hey man, wait!" So he finally just stops and goes, "What?" And the homeless guy goes, "Here man, you helped me out last week and I just wanted to say thank you. I didn't forget you," and proceeds to hand my brother-in-law $10. At this point, he and my husband are both just like, WTF, and my brother-in-law goes to give it back to the guy saying, "Nah man, you'll need it again, don't worry about me," and the homeless guy was absolutely adamant that he'd take the money. So rad and so bizarre. Finally, a story that meets the criteria of the topic at hand while also showing the what goes around comes around benefit to karma and charity. I've said it before, but some of these are just people virtue signaling and not actually saying anything about the topic. Coincidentally, my dad just told me this story. He was grabbing a quick lunch at McDonald's and some guy asked him for cash to buy food. Dad only had his card on him, so he bought this dude a huge meal instead. A few weeks later, the same guy hits him up for cash at the gas station. My dad doesn't have anything, and he says no with an apology, but the dude freaks out and starts screaming, "You Mexicans are so cheap! Screw you! Go back to your country!" etc. My dad calmly replies, "I remember you. I brought you a meal a few weeks ago, and because of your attitude, I will never, ever help you again, you ungrateful female dog." I mean, yeah, no matter who you are, if someone's immediate response is to be racist to you after you've just said, "No, I will not give you my hard-earned money," then yeah, you can say whatever the hell you want to them as far as I'm concerned. With charity, it depends mostly on who asks and why. I'm a fairly nice guy. I like helping out and such. On Sunday, a coworker told me his sister had cancer and was collecting donations. I gave him a $20 bill to help out. Downtown, you can tell who's just in it for the money. They get like $2 tops. I'll admit, when I went to LA recently, I didn't see a single homeless person that I wasn't like, "Oh, damn, you need this more than me." Except for maybe the one really talkative guy who was all like, "Hey, you know, the royal family are evil, right? I'm telling you this because you're English, you know." I was once visiting a girl I used to date at a local Walmart when I noticed that this middle-aged pregnant woman was struggling with her groceries. Like a gentleman, I offered to carry them to her car for her, which she agreed. When we reached her car, she asked for my number. As it turned out, we went to the neighboring universities. Now, here's where things get a little shady. I get a call from an unknown number nearly 4 months later. Turns out it was the same lady asking if I could lend her Microsoft Word and a bunch of other software. I told her I couldn't because I didn't have it myself and recommended some free alternatives. I thought this was the last I would hear from her until a month later, I get yet again another call. It was her again. This time she informed me her baby was just born. I congratulated her. She then proceeded to ask me to do her graphic design homework for her. I politely declined and blocked her number. Some people like to leech off of kindness, know where to draw the line. I respect the fact that this lady's going to university while being pregnant and then obviously having to look after their baby, but it's not this person's problem to do your homework for you, especially when they're doing their own course and homework that they need to get done too. I once got yelled at for not giving a homeless woman money. She was spitting, she was angry, I was leaving the bank, so it's not out of line that she thought I would have money, but when she asked if I could spare some change and I said, "Sorry, I don't have any to spare," she freaked. I stopped, looked at her and said, "I have 15 grand in student loans, a mortgage and a dog. I don't have money to spare for someone who can't help themselves." She sat there slack-jawed and shuffled off, and I walked away feeling like a butt. You're not a bad person if you're simply trying to look after yourself and live within your means, okay? Plus, this lady sounds like she specifically placed herself in that area to ask people for money so that it'd be awkward when they maybe said no. So I was a student in the north of England and pretty poor. It's winter and I've just walked my friend to the city train station at the end of a visit. This guy approaches me with a story about how he's lost his bank card, his parents were supposed to pick him up, but their car has broken down and he's totally stranded in the city. He sells it to me. He really sells it to me, which is just as well because he needs like £40 to take the train. He even offers to leave me his laptop as collateral until he can pay me back. Now, I don't want this guy's laptop, but I don't want to lose a week's worth of food/expenses, so I come up with what seems to me a reasonable suggestion. I offer to give him the money if he'll let me hold the laptop battery. It was a big clip-on affair, probably worth about £40 to £50 for a replacement, so it seemed a reasonable compromise. He flipped and told me to go F myself, and that's more or less what I did. I'm going to remember that potentially for the future, because I'm guessing the laptop itself is probably got nothing on it. It's a shell, a hollow decoy, and the battery, he's just going to take that home and then put it into the actual laptop he likes to use. A bum I always see around my city came up and asked me for some cash for the bus. I've often seen her around and she always asks, and I usually give her my change or $1 or $2. I tell her I only have a few bucks but would give her some. She asks to see the money and I take out all I had, which was about $3 and change. She leans in and looks it over and asks, "Is that all?" I say it is, then she tells me she needs more. $2 can get you a bus ride anywhere here. I tell her again it's all I have. She gives me a dirty look, says she doesn't need my money, and goes off to ask the next person for cash. I use the term bum because, as it was explained to me, there seems to be some sort of hierarchy for the homeless. Hobos are like migrant workers, think Steinbeck. Tramps are transients who keep to themselves and fend for themselves. Bums are the douches who just want money and are usually butts. Don't need to be homeless or poor to be a bum. I guess the last part kinda holds true. You don't really need to be homeless or anything to be a bum. Here in England, it's a pretty normal thing to say to someone. It's like, you're bumming off your mother. You're bumming off the government, you scav. I do find the whole talk about, the hierarchy kind of funny. I'm just imagining at the very top, tippy top, there's a king hobo on Trash Mountain. What is the most overrated video game of all time? At this point, Pokemon. Ever since it got to 3D, it's gone downhill in terms of gameplay quality. I'm not gonna argue about Pokemon designs, because my issue is how they never got their Super Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild. Even the Mega Evolutions are fine, but they keep adding and changing gimmick mechanics to the point it feels like Yu-Gi-Oh!, where every entry has to add their own mechanic, and it makes the overarching game a cluster of rules and modifiers. They milk nostalgia so hard, like Sword and Shield. So many Gigamax evolutions, special versions of Dynamax, one on new Pokemon, but most were Gen 1 Pokemon. No other company do I see so shielded from their lack of quality and innovation. We even had a taste of an improved gameplay formula in Arceus and us researching Pokemon. We use It's a Kid's Game as an excuse to make crap when kids deserve good, if not better games than us, cause they don't have the knowledge to know it's crap. I gotta wholeheartedly agree with this, not the part about Pokemon being generally crap, just that I do think Pokemon as a franchise is shielded far too much for what people get. I mean, it's one of the most goddamn successful franchises in the entire world, and the games are fine, but that's just it. They're fine. I think Scarlet and Violet did look crap, though. For me personally, X and Y was the last Pokemon game that I actually bought, and then I borrowed Sword or Shield, I can't remember which one, and it was fine, but I really do expect better from one of the most successful franchises in the entire world. Probably the most successful franchise in the world. I'm gonna stick my neck out and say The Last of Us is a cool story to experience once, but as a video game, it's not some 10 out of 10 mind-blowing experience, and people got way too fanatical about it. I personally really enjoyed The Last of Us. I played through it multiple times. I even did a run where I refused to use guns where the game did not force me to. It's a solid game, but it's also one of those games that basically went, a man can only be interesting and deep and philosophical and sad and vulnerable if he has a child around. What put me off 2018 God of War? When, Kratos has a son now, and now he's an interesting character. Kratos was already interesting, you cowards. There were already several segments in multiple games that showed the depth of his anguish at the loss of his family and his vulnerability, which he channels through unyielding violence. Far Cry. The first 3 were ahead of the game, but everything since is just copy and pasted. You mean like everything else that Ubisoft make? I went there. I actually don't really play Far Cry. I've only played Far Cry Primal on the Wii. I actually have Far Cry 2 on my Steam library because it was £2 or something like that. So maybe I'll give that a go because I This guy said, I've heard the original Far Cry's are freaking amazing. But yeah, Ubisoft as a company, I feel like their newer Far Cry games, friggin' Assassin's Creed, they all just kind of blend together in my eyes. I don't really care about them anymore. I used to love Assassin's Creed, and Rayman Origins freaking rock. Like, Ubisoft used to be a good company.
Overwatch, it's just a shooter, man. It doesn't deserve the worship that it got, and it consistently underdelivers. People assume it has such a deep lore and world, but it really is a bare bone of a basic concept done to death.
I don't take this comment that seriously. I'm not an Overwatch guy. I used to be when it first came out. I played it for ages with friends all the time, but I'm pretty sure the die-hard fans of Overwatch are few and far between at this point, and it is far from an overrated game at this stage. Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong, though. Might be a controversial take, but The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I love it and hate it at the same time. I love the potential, but hate the execution. I love the lore around it, but hate how the game shows barely any of it. I love the world, but hate how empty it is. I love the characters, if they had any character at all. I love and hate it with a passion. I never actually finished The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, but, I think it's a case with open-world games where it's very easy to lose steam in them. It was just okay, in my opinion. Not like, it was pretty groundbreaking, I guess, for 2011. God, that's old now. But personally, I was like just getting super into Monster Hunter at that stage in my life. World of Warcraft. The lengths people will go through to try and keep that game playable is astounding. Combat just feels so clunky and repetitive. Okay, so I love Final Fantasy XIV, but I really don't think like combat is like the biggest thing in World of Warcraft. What I like about World of Warcraft is the world and exploring that world. That is dope as hell, exploring Azeroth. I'm gonna catch some crap for this, but BioShock. It never caught flack for being derivative of System Shock, even to the point of being named in obvious homage to it. Probably because relatively few people actually played System Shock at that point. But if they had, they might have wished BioShock was more derivative of it. Because while BioShock dresses itself with the language of immersive Sims, it completely failed to deliver on its initial promise of an open-level, play-it-your-way experience. BioShock is a game where you can sneak, but you can't beat the game by sneaking. You can hack, but you can't beat the game by hacking. Open combat is an inevitability. Similarly, the levels are big and open, but it always has a very clear idea of where you're supposed to go next and how you'll get there. I suppose it's appropriate in an ironic way that BioShock only ever gives you the illusion of choice. Speaking of which, the narrative is overall pretty mediocre, aside from the admittedly well-executed twist everyone talks about. Many of the areas, the only reason you're there is that it was between you and your objective, and that it's kind of the tone. It also mostly fails to integrate its political themes. Rapture's liberation vision failed because everyone got a substance that gave them superpowers but made them insane, not because the original vision was ghastly. Similarly, the communist opposition to it failed because the leader was secretly corrupt from the start. The game never really offers an opinion on whether either idea could work or why they would fail. It just kind of plays in the space for a bit before something else makes the question irrelevant. Yeah, I kind of get where they're coming from. I still enjoy BioShock. I haven't played it for a while, but if you really want a game that's really open in the way that you can approach the entirety of it and win in like very specific ways, then play Dishonored. That is an amazing game. That's the game that I will talk about, and people are probably going to turn around and go, oh, that's so overrated though. No. It's a perfect game, actually.
Zelda Breath of the Wild. I am a Zelda fan. I really love the series. I tried my best to get into this game and I wanted to love it, but I just could not as I found it very boring.
Fair enough if they feel that way. Personally, I thought that Breath of the Wild is probably one of the single greatest open world experiences in any video game ever. If anything, I'm having more trouble playing Tears of the Kingdom recently. I just cannot get into that game right now. Maybe it's because I'm just so busy and stuff, or I don't know, maybe it's because it feels a bit too similar to the original game with a lot of added mechanics. Sure, but whatever.
Listen, it's still good, but in no universe should Ocarina of Time win a best game of all time competition. And yet,
I think I disagree with that. I actually think the design philosophy in Ocarina of Time is super good. Z-targeting is still used to this day in many games, although obviously it's not called Z-targeting anymore, it's just lock-on. Like, I don't know, I feel like you could probably take a lot of third-person action games and be like, oh yeah, this kind of originated from Ocarina of Time in this way, you know? I mean, for God's sake, Dark Souls, Elden Ring and all that, it's basically just Ocarina of Time, really, when you get down to gameplay, but it's all polished and smooth and amazing. So personally, I gotta disagree with that. I think Ocarina of Time frickin' rocks, actually. And I ain't even talking from a place of nostalgia. I played that game for the first time all the way through on the 3DS.
Controversial opinion, the Dark Souls franchise. I think most of its difficulty is artificially created by clunky controls and a deliberate vagueness about how to tackle enemies. The people who love this game will say these are exactly the things that make it so great and I just need to get good scrub. Opinions differ and that's fine, but for me it feels like a disingenuous way to make things more difficult.
I couldn't disagree with this person more. In my opinion, Dark Souls and Bloodborne, Elden Ring, and Dark Souls 3, but not Dark Souls 2, use a lot of context and logic in the way that they do level design and enemy placement. Easy example, Sen's Fortress. If you run straight in there, you will notice that the first thing that happens is you activate a trap. This establishes a tone and establishes what you need to look out for and the kind of things that this place has up its sleeves. And if you don't adapt to stop and analyze the area for danger and whatnot, where you can and where you feel safe to, then you're gonna be fine. But if you just rough rod right in there, then you're gonna die. I frickin' love Dark Souls. I can't wait for Armored Core, but I feel bad for the OG fans because Armored Core is not Dark Souls.
Black and White, Molyneux's magnum opus, was just a glorified Tamagotchi.
Never played Black and White 1, but I did love Black and White 2 as a kid.
Red Dead Redemption 2, because it's just not fun to play, which, for me, is what a video game should be, Dutch.
I'm actually playing through this game for the first time recently, and it's not that it's not fun, but it's certainly a bit annoying when the game, forces me to beat a guy because I need to catch tuberculosis or, the 2-hour intro and stuff. Still a good game, but I agree, it is definitely overrated.
Honestly, Final Fantasy VII is extremely overrated. The story isn't that interesting, and the majority of other elements remain the same from previous entries. In my opinion, it only became so popular because it was the first disc-based Final Fantasy game and launched on the PS1 during its amazing sales point. Just about everyone had a PS1. Most of the ads for FF7 were promoting multiple discs, CG cutscenes, advanced graphics, and so on. FF7 released at the right time and at the right place, but it is by far one of the weaker entries.
Oh, I shouldn't have chosen this topic. I want to talk about these things so much. But I disagree. I think the original Final Fantasy VII is actually really freaking special. If we're talking about the remake, I don't think it's crap by any means, but I really don't like the changes they made to the remake. I'll leave it there because I've got a job to do, but god damn it, does it pain me not to talk about this in more detail. The Call of Duty franchise. Literally the same game every single time. I may have said it earlier, but I don't like military shooters, unless they have, a gimmick to them like Titanfall 2 or something. But I actually don't think every Call of Duty game is exactly the same. If you go back far enough and then go to where we are now, there have been major changes to the game. Maybe now, more recently, the games are probably being more and more similar, but I don't even see them get released as frequently as they used to be.
Death Stranding.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure upon release, the game actually did not sell that well, at least not in Hideo Kojima's eyes. I heard he had a bit of a fit that people didn't really get the game and that he's an auteur and he's ahead of his time, which I like Hideo Kojima, but I think Hideo Kojima, overall, kind of overrated, actually. Especially since he's been, rubbing elbows with, Hollywood actors and directors and stuff and just shoving them haphazardly into his video games.
As much as it pains me to say it, I think Minecraft is pretty overrated. Perhaps not the most of all time, but nonetheless so. I have quite a few friends who absolutely refuse to play anything other than Minecraft, just because they are so convinced that it is the best video game of all time, and all others are trash. I definitely don't agree with that, but that isn't the only reason I think it is overrated. Honestly, Minecraft has lost a lot of its charm over the years. The gameplay is simple and not extremely engaging. The only reason I use it today is for creative builds. Also, it was never and still isn't worth $30 goddamn. I actually haven't played Minecraft since it initially came out. My brother got the beta for it. The Binding of Isaac. Meh. It alright.
The Binding of Isaac is super good. I love the way that items pile onto each other to make cool mixtures, but I actually prefer one of the creators' earlier games called Gish. Hogwarts Legacy. Yeah, I think that major attempt at boycotting that game just ended up having the reverse effect that people wanted.
Red Dead Redemption 2. I have never played a game that someone went to such effort to build a massive, well-engineered and detailed wilderness, only to fill it with so little that it brought me nearly to tears with boredom. But so many people rave about this game, and I will never understand it.
Like I said, I've been playing it recently, and I do think it's a good game, but I think this is just the problem with massive open-world games. There is very little that they can do to fill these worlds in a satisfying way that isn't better done than a small, concentrated world where you can absolutely stuff it to the brim with good, solid content. That can then feed into level design, theming for the area, etc. I'm not going to go into this anymore.
Shadow of the Colossus. Apart from visuals, the game was a chore to play.
You know, I actually prefer Eco a little more than Shadow of the Colossus, but Shadow of the Colossus to me is more like an experience. Like, there's no other game like it.
God of War Ragnarok. I'm sorry, but it just didn't do it for me. Completely underwhelming. Felt more like a mountain climbing simulator than anything. And Kratos literally only kills one frickin' god the entire gameplay. WTF. I get he's changing in a different person, but really, the ghost of Sparta needs help to fight Odin's old female dog butt. And sure, he beats Thor the second fight, but he forgives Thor and doesn't want to hurt him, despite Thor trying to kill his son earlier. Instead of God of War, I got God of holding hands and licking buttholes.
A little bit extreme at the end there, but no, I get where he's coming from. I still stand by that. People try to say that these new games have more depth than the original ones, but I think it's just people didn't really pay attention to the old games.
I have no idea if this was considered good, and I've never played a Kojima game, but Death Stranding. I have never experienced a piece of media so far up its own butt. Like 6 minutes of gameplay in the first 2 hours of the game. The biggest challenge in that time was walking in a straight line, utterly confusing menus, the wild swings between characters staring at nothing and explaining nothing, and ham-fisted exposition, a riveting chase scene except the land is shrouded in fog and the monsters are invisible, a soulless world with like 5 people in it, 2 of which have dead or die in their name, who constantly introduce themselves like they aren't the only people we've ever met, and freedom of camera movement during the interminable cutscenes. If you're going to just make a movie, at least give us cinematography. I swear I only played as long as I did because I couldn't believe the game would continue to be so bad. I'm convinced it's End of Evangelion the game, a double middle finger to his fans who will buy anything of his, so he made a pile of nonsense to watch their mental gymnastics explain why the game is secretly genius.
The only reason I might be bringing up some games twice is because people are actually explaining why they didn't like it, and I've never played this game, and that's all I really have to say about it.
I played every Borderlands game from start to finish and I hated them. I kept assuming they would suddenly get better and I would understand why people loved them. Nope.
I admittedly find the writing of Borderlands 3, which was the latest one that I played recently, abysmal, but you know, I think the games have merits. The shooting's fun, the random gun loot is cool, and yeah, they're okay.
Hollow Knight.
I get it, Metroidvanias aren't for everyone, it's easy to get lost in it, even with the map to some degree, but god damn it, may the power of Christ compel you!
Gears of War, Monster Hunter, Final Fantasy. I don't get why these IPs are so popular.
Popularize the third-person cover-based shooter, tracking monsters, fighting monsters, building new weapons to fight more monsters out of the monsters that you previously thought is awesome. One of the first video game IPs to tell an engaging and ambitious narrative.
First-person shooters. It doesn't matter what the name is, it's all the goddamn same thing, repackaged over and over and over again.
Clearly you don't play enough first-person shooters because they do in fact vary wildly. I absolutely love Hunt Showdown because it's a lot more methodical and slow-paced. I don't feel like I can just die the instant I get ambushed a lot of the time because the guns aren't automatic and whatnot. That's just one example of a first-person shooter I like, though.
Heavy Rain. I know people crap on it now, but it did very well when it first came out. Same with Beyond Two Souls and Detroit Become Human. David Cage is a funny one. I've not played a single one of his games. I can see that he tries to push the envelope a little bit in his own way, but I kind of put him in the same category as Telltale games, where they're games that I will simply watch someone else play. Cuphead. I never understood the appeal of it. To me, it's just a 2D platformer with quick mechanics and old-fashioned animation style and difficult bosses. I don't think it's a bad game, by the way. I've been playing that with my girlfriend lately, and she's so much better than me at it. She's absolutely carrying the team. But I don't know, I think that Cuphead is sort of an instant classic just based on the amount of time and effort that went into it. If you look at the original trailer, it looks so bare bones compared to what it became. Horizon Zero Dawn. I was excited to play this game when it first came out, and honestly, I found it tedious and a bit basic and bland. I'd have preferred it to be a linear game as opposed to open world because there isn't enough in the world for it to be that enjoyable. I think that's just it in the end. Open world games are overrated. We need to return to smaller, more directed and concentrated areas in games where, like I said earlier, you can concentrate on theming, you can base level design and missions around it. But most of all, I think it's a big part that people do not like about open world games. You can make traversal of the world more engaging. Any battle royale. It was cool at first, then the novelty of it wore off years ago. It is literally a running simulator, and the design of the mode itself promotes people to play like absolute rats and hide in buildings the whole entire frickin' match. Absolute dog crap, trash piece of crap genre that I can't wait to see die so I can wee on its grave. Not sure if I go that far about my feelings of the genre, but I thought it was cool when they made a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Battle Royale game, and then I looked at it and it looked kind of crap. Dare I say, Assassin's Creed is a walking simulator with occasional action and stealth tactics. Yeah, I dropped off Assassin's Creed after Brotherhood, admittedly, mostly because I wanted to play the multiplayer, which I still think is actually a really cool multiplayer mode. Ghost of Tsushima. Game was okay, but it was overhyped in my opinion. I actually think Ghost of Tsushima got absolutely robbed for Game of the Year in 2020. Hades was good, but it was in early access for freaking ages. I know it was the official time where it was finished and everything, but I don't think it even deserved to be there because it was in early access for so long. Honestly, I kind of think the only reason The Last of Us 2 actually won Game of the Year in 2020 is because it met all the ESG regulations. PT. Whenever there is talk about horror games, lots of people talk about it as if it is the pinnacle of horror games. Hell, it was a demo of an eventually shelved product. Yo, I don't care what you say. That game was scary as a mother. I literally dropped my control screaming into my full English dinner while playing it with a friend. But it was also quite maddening to figure out how to proceed in that game. In my opinion, probably GoldenEye. I was playing PC games at the time. Quake, Team Fortress was already out, and my expectations were built up by people who hadn't played an FPS before. Same type of thing happened when Halo released on Xbox, and people acted like it was the first game with LAN play. Had trouble deciding between GoldenEye and Halo, but I at least had some fun with Halo games. GoldenEye always felt like a clumsy attempt to me. I have never had a good time playing GoldenEye, so I agree.
Guys who married bridezillas, what happened after the wedding? My first wife was a bridezilla. During our honeymoon, she realized she was married and the wedding day was history. She wanted the big wedding, which she had, not the actual marriage. The next 2 years were miserable until she finally tapped out. I was young and stupid, and the thought of divorce never crossed my mind. I don't know why it didn't. I guess I just assumed I'd be miserable the rest of my life. When she told me she was leaving, it felt as if the weight of the world was off of my shoulders. On a happy note, her parents were still paying off the wedding when we divorced. That's what happens when you allow your daughter everything she wanted, including 2 wedding dresses. I have a feeling this is how a lot of these stories are gonna go. They wanted the big wedding, and then once it's over, they realize they don't really care so much anymore. One of my coworkers married a bridezilla. I'll try to just hit the bullet points of what happened leading up to, during, and after the wedding, but it's still a lot. The moment he proposed, she lost any interest in any woohoo. According to him, she also basically stopped acting like the woman he fell in love with and started acting like her real self, which was completely crazy. A week after he proposed, she quit her job because her full-time job was now planning the wedding. The wedding was horrible, but I'm getting there. She had a fight with his mother because the bride demanded the groom's mom pay for half the wedding, but get zero input, and wasn't allowed to contribute to the guest list, which was 95% the bride's friends and family. The bride, who was 30 years old, subsequently egged her future mother-in-law's house. When the bride and groom had a fight about the egging, he went to work the next day and she shaved her head and sent him a video of her screaming and sobbing as she buzzed her hair off in the bathroom. I worked with him. He showed me the video when he said he had to leave. I strongly urged him to have her assessed by a psychiatrist. Jump to the wedding. It was in a pool clubhouse in the summer. It was way too small for the 150 plus people they invited. Someone forgot to turn the AC on until after the place was packed. A lifeguard showed up in a swimsuit to turn it on, but it did little given it was already sweltering. 2 rows of chairs in the clubhouse were ribboned off with reserved signs on them, so no one sat in them. They were later occupied by the 6 seated bridesmaids, leaving about a dozen open chairs once the wedding started. The one groomsman stood by the groom and didn't sit. Elderly people were left standing or reduced to sitting on the floor, as there was no way to get to the chairs once the ceremony started. The bride showed up 90 minutes late, having been unhappy with her hair, which I assume was a wig, and makeup, so she took it all off and did it herself. So all the guests are standing there for an hour and a half waiting for her. The groom was literally standing at the altar sweating his butt off in a wool suit in the South's high summer, and was clearly not sure if she would show up. He looked like he felt sick. When the bride showed up, she burst into the clubhouse, marched down the aisle, and snapped at the officiant to hurry up and get started. During the prayer, while the religious groom had his head bowed, she turned to wave at everyone. I don't pray, so I was looking up. Then she told her mother to go get her some water. She drank a bottle of water during the prayer and kept grinning and waving at people in attendance, paying zero mind to her groom in front of her. When the ceremony was over, tables were crammed into the clubhouse and apparently only family and immediate friends of the bride had seats at tables. The rest of us were going to be standing outside during the reception. So I didn't see a dance, a speech, the cake cut, nothing. The food was served outside in the southern US July heat, with bugs everywhere. The bride made the groom go get her food over and over. He meekly stood in line with the other 150 people, until people insisted he go sit and let them get the food. Nope, she told him to get the food, so he said he had to be the one to get her food. She never left her table, never greeted any of her guests. Apparently, they had a massive fight as they were leaving the following day for the honeymoon. The bride laying all the failures of the wedding she planned at him and his mom's feet. She threw his luggage out of the car and tried to drive to the airport by herself. But he had their tickets and jumped on the hood to stop her from driving off in his car. He got fired about a month after the wedding because he kept showing up late, leaving early, and leaving in the middle of the day, usually because she called him with some crisis. 1 year after the wedding, I got a thank you note for my wedding gift, which was signed by just the bride with a note that said, "As you may have heard, Ryan and I have had a bumpy start in our first year as a married couple, and we're separated now. Thanks for the lovely gift." They divorced a couple months later. You know, I know what I was getting into with this thread, but I can't help but just feel bad for all these guys. I married a groomzilla, bent over backwards to make the wedding as magical as he wanted. I would have been happy in someone's backyard with a potluck. He admitted in couples counseling 7 years later that he never really wanted to marry me, so much as he just wanted a huge show and party. Everyone liked and approved of me, so he wanted them all to see he was making a good choice and be envious. He wanted them to be proud of him. We used up most of the money I got from a car accident settlement. Could have put a down payment on a small house. He asked for a divorce in 2020. They had an expensive $75,000 wedding. After they split up, it turned out the bride never turned in the paperwork to make their marriage legal. The groom didn't even know he wasn't married until he wanted to file for divorce. The bride never returned the gifts either, even though they never really got married. She just lied to everyone about it. I don't know how many people know she never got married. This sounds like it would be illegal in some way, no? My brother married a bridezilla. She yelled at my mother on the day of for asking her where she wanted certain decorations at the reception site. There wasn't a written plan, so my mom had nothing to go off of. Never thanked my parents for financially contributing to the wedding. Accused a bridesmaid of trying to upstage her by getting a spray tan before the wedding. My brother wanted me to be in the wedding party, but she told him to his face that I was too pretty to be in the wedding party and all of her bridesmaids had to be less attractive than her. She stole my sister-in-law's jacket in the middle of the reception. Literally took it right off her back, because one of the bridesmaids was cold. It was a night reception in the spring. The girl should have brought a jacket. The list goes on. Well, they got divorced about a year later because apparently her demanding attitude carried over into the marriage. Needless to say, the rest of my family had a little party when we heard about the divorce. She sounds like a piece of work, but is there literally any compliment more objectively true than being told you're too attractive for the wedding party by a vapid narcissist? Not a bridezilla, but a groomzilla. A friend of my father was remarrying. It was both his and his bride's second time around, both in their early 40s, and an arranged marriage. The guy was an utter groomzilla. He demanded that everything be at top-notch hotels with obscenely expensive catering and hired string quartets and whatnot for the entertainment. Mostly paid out of the bride's family's pocket, I might add. The parties on the night leading up to the main wedding event were opportunity enough for him to make a rather public fool of himself, talking at the top of his voice and showboating the entire time. But the kicker came the next day, when the bride was missing from her own wedding reception. Obviously, it was very odd and conspicuous, and the few relatives from her side made some non-committal excuses for her not feeling well. Turns out, this jerk had divorced the poor woman right after he'd had his wedding night fun. He said that he didn't like her enough, and that's an almost literal quote. So he gave her the divorce papers and that was it. The marriage was officially over before the festivities even ended. That's gotta be close to a record turnaround time, right? But seriously, that guy is a massive jerk. My cousin was married to one. He comes from a very not wealthy area and has become successful himself after moving out of his hometown. His wife was extremely wealthy, even could say excessively. They married after a year of knowing each other, and boy was it a surprise to hear about the wedding plans. They spent over $250,000 on the wedding, including catering by 5 to 7 different restaurants. Their food was from different cultures and cooked in front of you. Think almost hibachi buffet style. They even had servers in tailed suits and white gloves serving Taco Bell after midnight once everyone was drunk. Once they got married, she was spending more money than he could make. She was getting mad because he wasn't making enough, while she wasn't working and they hadn't had any kids. They got divorced, and she gave him the ultimatum of getting his ring back or keeping the dog. He kept the dog. Her sister, a lawyer, helped her file a restraining order on him, and they haven't spoken since. Screw her, but man did he dodge a bullet. $250,000 is an insane amount of money for a wedding. Our guy made the right decision keeping the dog, though. I married a groomzilla. We're talking costume changes between wedding and reception, yelling at the wedding planner, dragged out fights about whether we can add fruit kebabs so people would get enough to eat, everything. There was zero compromise. He made a lot of promises for things I had been wanting after the wedding, and they never materialized, like a beach vacation and such. Turns out, no compromise at the wedding meant no compromise anywhere else, so I left him after 4 years of marriage. Best decision ever. No compromise at the wedding meant no compromise anywhere else is probably about the best way you could sum up this entire thread. A friend of my husband's, who he's known since they were kids, so about 20 years now, married a bridezilla. She's evangelical and religion is pretty much her life, and he was agnostic, a nice metalhead geek guy. They asked us to be the best man and woman. Me and my husband are both tattooed, and when we arrived at the wedding, we were his only friends. Everyone in that big wedding was from her, now also his, church. Well, the preacher kept saying to him he had his old life and now his new life, his old friends and now the new friends, yada yada yada. But all the time criticizing his old ways, the authentic way. And everyone kept looking at me and my husband like we were beasts. Worst day ever. She's that kind of person that wants to be an influencer. Every single thing is in her Instagram. Their relationship seems perfect there, but he always seems so unhappy, so apathetic, especially when we used to see him. Always talking about how things are so different, how things are like she wants. Her stories are basically her saying he does nothing right. It's even humiliating. She made him stop talking to us. This last week, he got out of every group we had. He stopped answering my husband, who's very sad that he lost one of his friends. I believe she's the one replying with the few weird messages he does get. That's the bridezilla. It seems very common for the bridezilla to act on social media, but in real life, it's all messy. It honestly sounds like these two were very different from each other when they got married. Like, these two lifestyles don't really mesh together. I feel like he must have known he was going to be giving everything up to marry her. My girlfriend of 10 years is very down to earth and level-headed. We finally decided to get married later this year for a few reasons, and she's feeling a lot of phantom pressure to do things a certain way. It's not like there's an overbearing mom or catty friends applying pressure or expectations. It's just the whole idea is overwhelming and filled to the brim with opportunities to make a decision you might end up regretting later or forever. I've taken a more active role in narrowing down options instead of asking her to pick a perfect solution out of 5 million possible options. It's helped somewhat, but there's still a lot of pressure on her, seemingly out of nowhere, to make a series of decisions that all depend on the first few big decisions that are weighing heavily on us. All this to say, I can see how this kind of stuff could turn a normal woman into a lunatic. These types of events tend to bring latent family and friend drama to the forefront, and emotions are high before anything even really gets started. My guess is that a lot of bridezillas were actually lovely people who calmed down and returned to being lovely people after the stress of wedding stuff is removed. This is the other side of the coin. Planning a wedding does have a lot involved, and there are a lot of general expectations. It's understandable how a normal person could get overwhelmed. Before reading these comments, I thought a bridezilla was a woman huge and strong enough to be compared to Godzilla, and entered the thread eagerly expecting to read stories about grooms getting lifted and carried off into the sunset on their wedding day. I'm very disappointed. My uncle married one. She had a spending problem, went clubbing in her 40s thinking she was 20, acted like she was better than everyone, couldn't keep friendships, and cheated on my uncle with a man 10 to 15 years her junior. My uncle is remarried and happy now. Sounds like she never quite grew up and just wanted to live her life as a party. That's definitely a red flag. Been married 14 years now. She's definitely a pain in the butt sometimes, but so is everyone else. I'm also pretty laid back, so a lot of decisions I leave to her because I just don't care. If it's a decision I do care about, I make the decision. Without her, I wouldn't have the 3 best kids on earth. She's an amazing mom, and our kids have our best qualities. We have fun all the time. I think she was a bridezilla not because she was a crazy person. It was more about making the moment right for everyone and making it a great memory. She had a relatively rough life with her parents, and there weren't a ton of great memories. I noticed she goes way out of her way to make great memories for the kids, as she's always planning stuff for us to do with them. I'm gonna keep her. I married a bridezilla. In the 18 months we were married, she was such an unfit mother with too many instances to list here that when the divorce was finalized, I got custody of our kid and the kid she had prior to our marriage. Also, she was a blackout drunk and cheated on me with several different men. The final straw was when I had to travel out of state to check on my grandmother. I came back a day early, saw used Marlboros in the ashtray, not her brand, and I don't smoke, and then I heard grunting and groaning in the bedroom. Yep, there she was, and there he was, and there he was. Devil's Triangle. I contacted a divorce lawyer the next day, finalized it as fast as possible. Ding ding ding, we have a winner. My uncle married this lady who was an insane bridezilla and put him into an enormous amount of debt because she wouldn't settle for anything less than her perfect dream wedding. She had the marriage annulled after the fancy honeymoon and said she didn't want to be his wife, but she always wanted to have her dream wedding. Jerk. My cousin was an unbelievable bridezilla. About a year after their horrifying wedding, her husband convinced her to seek help for her mental health. 5 years later, she's in a much better place and they're happy. just in case anyone wanted a happy story. My girlfriend's former friend was a bridezilla. Didn't smile once at her own wedding because she was too busy freaking out over insignificant details. Although she has a master's degree with unpaid college loans, she's now a permanent stay-at-home mom, an anti-vaxxer, and a conspiracy theorist. She spends her days getting into Facebook beefs with anyone who isn't woke enough. No idea how her husband hasn't gone crazy, cause as far as I know, he's not into any of that. She sounds like exactly the type of person you would expect a stereotypical bridezilla to be. My sister decided to marry a fellow she'd been with for less than 4 months. Second marriage. It was spur of the moment, with less than 1 month notice. Let's all fly across Canada for a lovely East Coast wedding. Flying across Canada is expensive. Anyways, I had just started a new job and it was imperative that I be there at work during her wedding time. Not the slightest option of time off. I would have been let go. She didn't talk to me for over a year. The marriage lasted around a year, if that. She took him for everything. He lost his house, his car, and drank himself out of his job. She even took his dog. Other family members stepped in and gave him his dog back. She's a peach. Single if anyone's looking. My first marriage was to a bridezilla. She got drunk before the ceremony and wouldn't dance because she was too anxious people would make fun of her. She tried bragging to my cousins during the dinner that our wedding was better than theirs. The 4 of us got married in a 2-year span. She invited her ex-boyfriend to the ceremony that I later found out she had been sleeping with both before and after our wedding. She took the money we'd received as gifts and were planning on using for a house down payment and spent it on random crap. She had a ton of debt that she kept from me as well. I left her a year after to the day and never looked back. I'm now happily married to a great woman. Obviously, hindsight yada yada, but there were a lot of red flags I should have noticed. Here are some of the big things she did after the wedding. She spent money quicker than she could make it. I ended up having to take on a second job, and I already worked 50+ hours a week, all just to cover the bills. She started using substances and stopped going to work. She would visit her friends in the evening. Found out later on she was going to her boyfriend's. The final straw was when I found out what she was doing with the money. I didn't know at first she was into substances. Online payment of bills weren't as popular when we were married, so I would give her the money to go and pay some during banking hours. One day, I got pulled over and charged with no insurance on my vehicle. Turns out she was taking the money for bills and buying substances. When the notices for no payment would come in the mail, she would hide them or rip them up. I handed her the separation papers on our 1-year anniversary. I, 21-year-old female at the time, married a groomzilla, 25. I wanted to elope because I didn't like the idea of being stared at by people. He demanded a wedding of 200+. He had my parents build a giant gazebo on our farm. Said he'd help pay for building costs. Me and my dad built it by hand with our neighbor. He was always working. Don't get me wrong, he helped a few weekends, but it was a year-long project. Shortly after the wedding, we retired to our hotel, and he didn't want to consummate. I was like, okay, long day, I get it. 3 months into a sexless marriage, I walk into him banging our 60-ish-year-old male neighbor. I opened my bedroom door, saw what was happening, said I was sorry, shut the door, got my dog, and drove home to mommy and daddy a state away. Why did I say I was sorry and not yell? I'll never know. Doctors of Reddit, what's the biggest case of faking it you've ever seen? Taking trauma call during surgery residency, I had a prisoner come in after a fight and claimed he couldn't move or feel his legs. All the CT scans and MRIs were normal, but we would shield his legs so he couldn't see them and poke them with needles and other sharp objects with enough force to cause pain. He never flinched or moved his legs at all. He was diagnosed with SIWORA, which stands for spinal cord injury without radiographic abnormality. He stayed in the hospital for a week. No improvement. Always had one guard with him. One night, they were down in the lobby watching some television, but the guard needed to use the restroom. The patient said, "Where could I possibly go? I'm paralyzed." The guard left him alone for 2 minutes. The patient was last seen sprinting down the road, naked butt cheeks flapping in the breeze. Made it to a city 4 hours away by car before he was caught again. I've never seen anyone fake it so well. Truly playing the long con. Yeah, this guy had a plan and he was seeing it through to the end. Dermatologist here. Patient was convinced she had a melanoma and needed a biopsy and would need to be on workers' comp. I told her it looked like ink from a marker. She demanded a biopsy. I wiped the area off with an alcohol swab and showed her the ink and that there was no spot on her skin anymore. She stormed out, threatening to sue. I'm just glad I cured her melanoma. You truly are a miracle worker, Doc. Had a patient come in for a fall who now couldn't move their legs at all. Did a bunch of tests and didn't find anything. The patient was not at all fazed by suddenly being paralyzed, which was the first red flag. Didn't really believe anything was wrong, but the patient was still not moving their legs. My options are to admit for a huge workup or get them to walk. So I update them saying everything is fine, tests are negative, you can go home. Patient gets up, gets dressed, and walks out without a word. So we're not even going to acknowledge the fact that you just completely lied? Not a doctor, but I worked in healthcare for nearly 20 years. While taking a break from the ICU due to it being emotionally draining, I worked in home health for a bit. I had a patient who clearly had Munchausen syndrome. On a daily basis, she would call her insurance to see what things would be covered if she was diagnosed with this or that. She called her doctor's office an average of 5 times during my shift with her. She would report all kinds of non-real symptoms. She pestered the doctors into doing an exploitive laparoscopic surgery. Of course, nothing was found. One day, I walked in and she was rubbing her incisions with rotten cabbage, trying to get it infected. She wasn't seeking pain meds, except to sell. Really, she was just as happy with antibiotics or stool softeners. Anything. As long as they wrote her a prescription and she got to go to the pharmacy where she did a whole song and dance for them too, claiming allergies and reactions. She always increased the exaggeration of her story too. One time, she fluttered her eyes after making sure I was looking and said she lost consciousness in that half a second. She called the doctor and claimed she lost consciousness for 5 minutes. She called the insurance and claimed it was 10 minutes. She called the pharmacy and claimed it was 30 minutes. Then she called 911 and told them she woke up on the floor after losing consciousness for 4 hours. The worst thing about her was she was a mom. Her son was 28 at the time, and by all the stories of his childhood illnesses and her saying how he's severely disabled, I knew she basically screwed up his childhood with Munchausen by proxy. She portrayed him as being severely disabled, and that's why he would never find a wife. I met him. He was healthy and of average intelligence. He wasn't looking for a wife. He was gay, but she refused to accept that. Working with her was so miserable that I took a couple years off from any and all healthcare after that. No, I don't blame you. It sounds like you paid your dues with this woman for a while. We had a patient faking a seizure, so my supervisor told one of us to get the brain needle. The patient made a miraculous and swift recovery without intervention. A young woman, maybe around 18 to 20 years old, went running into a small rural hospital ER pretending to have abdominal pain. Police officer had tagged her going 40+ kilometers over the speed limit, which was stunt driving as per the new law in Ontario. Impound and license suspension automatic. Cop followed her into the ER and apparently said he'd be waiting for her when she left. Locum staff such as myself were housed at a small B&B about 15 minutes away, and the ER had pre-printed orders set to be done before we arrived. When I arrived, she flat out admitted that she just came in because she freaked out and didn't stop. I told her we'd give her 45 minutes to call her parents or family before I booted her. Except BHCG came back positive, and subsequent ultrasounds came back showing extremely early ectopic. The officer figures out something's up when he hears an air ambulance call come in over the radio. She was completely asymptomatic and just worked out that she dodged both charges and a life-threatening issue by accident. It was definitely a WTF moment. She's incredibly lucky she ran away from the police. You don't get to say that often. Pediatric neuropsychologist here. Got a referral for more or less consolidation care. Patient was 13, wheelchair bound, required therapeutic oxygen, seizures, arthritis, musculoskeletal problems, suspected autism, completely nonverbal, severe behavior challenges, the list goes on. He was being followed by at least 8 different specialities. clearly none of whom were communicating with each other, and the med list was around 18 prescriptions long, including some incredibly heavy-duty stuff. Opioids, antipsychotics, antiepileptics, that sort of stuff. Got kicked to me after his upteenth ER trip because the ER doctor felt something was off, and he needed someone to look at the whole picture. Factitious disorder by caregiver or Munchausen by proxy. All of the original symptoms were parent-reported, going back to about a year old. It possibly started with a fever-induced seizure in infancy, but this was never witnessed by anyone but mom. She's been telling docs different things. She was convinced her son had all these disorders, told him he was gonna die any day. He got a Make-A-Wish trip, donations, all kinds of things. He was removed from her custody and taken off most of his meds. Within a few weeks, he was out of the wheelchair playing basketball, no oxygen, super talkative and friendly, and no behavior problems. He did have a pretty significant intellectual disability, but there's no way to say if that was organic or the result of the prescription cocktail he had been fed all his life. Hopefully, with some good therapy and a stable home, he can continue to make progress. Some parents just really know how to mess up their kids. Physical therapist here. Working mom comes into the clinic with her infant in a stroller. She's limping like she's got a nail in her foot, wincing in pain and tears in her eyes. She's crying during her visit with the PT. None of us think she's faking it. She limped out of the clinic. I glanced out of the window and saw this woman bounding down the sidewalk, hips swaying, full stride, going places. We were all fools. I guess she was just there for painkillers or something? Whenever we had kids, usually teenagers, playing up their symptoms to extend their hospital stay, we would order them into a healthy lifestyle. Lights out at 9, no screen time for 2 hours before bed, healthy diet chock full of fruits and vegetables, screen time limits, minimum number of laps around the unit per day to get in their exercise. They got better so much faster with our healthy lifestyle tips. My brother was an EMT for 2 years, and he told me this. People will try to use the ambulance as a means for transportation from Fulton to Oswego because the hospital's in Oswego by faking seizures. Sometimes when the head EMT guy was feeling fun and knew the person was faking, he'd say something like, "Man, it's weird that he's having seizures but not peeing himself." Apparently, the person would kind of snap out of it for a second, weigh up the repercussions, then either pee themselves or stop faking. I thought that was hilarious. Sorta along the same idea. Working at a pharmacy, we saw a guy come in to try and get a refill on some pain meds that had no refill. After pleading that his ear really hurt, we told him again we couldn't refill it. One of the other employees saw him step into a side hallway, take a pencil, and jam it forcefully into his ear repeatedly, drawing blood. He calmly left and went to the ER. He came back a few hours later with a prescription for pain meds. Oh, this one really bothers me. This isn't faking. This dude has an addiction and apparently will do whatever it takes to get his pain meds. This patient comes in for back pain with weakness of the legs, gets a full workup with MRI, standard blood work, and then some immunological things to look for stuff like myasthenia gravis. No neurological or immunological explanation for the weakness. Patient is seen by physical therapy and they're of the opinion that the patient is holding back intentionally. Go to see the patient at the end of the day and prep them for discharge. Patient is infuriated that they're being discharged, yelling and screaming about how they aren't better, how they're disappointed in the institution, and blah blah blah. They said one particular thing that still clearly stands out 3 to 4 years later.
I can't believe you're sending me home already. I haven't even told my family I'm here, and now you're gonna send me home before they even have the chance to see me?
My attending and I leave the room to arrange things with the nurses. We go back in and the patient is out of bed and standing up in the middle of the room. Miraculously, the patient is able to walk with zero assistance, when they had so much difficulty walking with assistance over the past 2 days. At that point, they were enraged we went in the room without knocking. They were discharged home after having a conversation regarding abuse of medical services. Had a patient when I was an intern feigning blindness. She would constantly be playing on her smartphone, only furiously trying to hide it when someone from the care team came into her room. The best was when my attending one day strolled past her room and threw his hand up in a highly exaggerated hello wave. She started to throw her arm up too, but caught herself halfway through, then threw her hand back in her lap and pretended to be staring off into nothing. Nurse for an ophthalmologist here. Had a 21-year-old new patient claiming to be completely blind from a sudden and severe glaucoma diagnosis from a previous unknown doctor. Would feel around while walking, tried to keep his eyes rolled back into his head, the whole 9 yards. He said he's a famous YouTube rapper that's now unable to make videos or earn a living. I exclaimed to have heard him before, and very excitedly asked him to search and show me his YouTube channel on my phone so that I could subscribe. He took my phone out of my hand and effortlessly found the YouTube app and typed away in the search bar. Oh, and of course his eyes were back to normal and focused. Come on, man, you're gonna fall for that? One time my roommate, who's an ICU nurse, came to see one of my indoor soccer games. During the game, a player on the other team went down hurt and started screaming in pain and swearing and rolling around while holding his ankle, before he eventually was helped off the field. He then limped over to where the fans sat and watched the rest of the game brooding in silence before he left early. After the game, my roommate told me he was going to go over and see if there was anything he could do to help, until he saw that the guy was limping on the wrong leg. How did no one else notice this? Only the nurse caught on to the fact that the guy's limping on the foot that he hurt? Was told this one by a fellow nurse I used to work with when we had a psych floor. It's not unusual for psych patients to stash things in various orifices. This one woman was convinced she was impregnated by a ghost-like figure, but no one would believe her. So one day, she started complaining of massive pelvic and uterine pain. She called them contractions. So the doctor goes to do an exam. The doctor feels something larger in there, so they prep a table to get the object out, which was quite large. So the wonderful third year helping with the procedure starts hearing this woman complain of contractions and yelling things like, "Should I push? I'm gonna start pushing!" The doctor is trying to work forceps around this woman's parts as to not hurt her. Finally goes, "Got," and as he starts saying it, pulls out a baby doll, head only. The poor med student did the wobble, went all flush and had problems keeping balance and about took a dive. I was told he didn't live that down the whole rotation. I mean, I don't blame the poor kid. In his mind, he just saw a baby's head get ripped off. I once saw a patient who had been faking paralysis of the legs for years, used a wheelchair, and never walked. Old records showed extensive imaging, neurology consults, and other tests that proved the patient had full function of all his extremities. Family and friends were just going along with it, not sure if it was really conversion disorder or if the patient had some secondary gain issue. Not a doctor, but am a UK-based midwife. Had a patient who had been in and out of hospital throughout her pregnancy with episodes of heavy bleeding. This was her 6th baby, so she was a fairly well-known patient in our unit. The issue was no one had ever seen her actively bleeding. She'd call saying that she had bled down the toilet but flushed it. All the examinations we did came back completely normal with mostly no evidence of any bleeding whatsoever. On occasion, during spectrum examinations, we'd see the smallest amount of blood. I was caring for her during a shift where she yet again called to say she was bleeding. I walked into her room and found her jabbing her private area with a sharp object to make herself bleed. She'd been doing it the entire pregnancy. The reason she gave? Because she had 5 noisy children at home, she needed some rest, and knew we wouldn't admit her to the hospital if it wasn't for a good reason. She would do it any time her being discharged home was mentioned. We ended up having to complete a prenatal mental health referral and consult with the safeguarding midwives, as she was putting herself and the baby at risk of serious harm. I understand needing to get away from the kids for a little bit, but this is an extreme. Ophthalmology technician. People pretend to be blind all the time. I go to check their eye pressure with the Tono pen, a device you poke them directly in the eye with, and they go, "What the heck is that thing?" I'm a nurse. We had a guy who had to come in every 3 months to get a medical certificate to say he couldn't work at his retail job due to severe disabling back pain. He was receiving large amounts of insurance money for this condition. After the doctor had done his usual examinations and questions and signed it off, the guy asks the doctor to check his shoulder, which Doc does and asks how he injured it. The guy says playing rugby for a competitive team. Really, says the doc. How long have you been playing for them? Guy's been playing and training the whole time. Doc puts this info on the insurance form. The doc lost it in the staff room laughing. Next week, the patient loses his mind in reception because his insurance has been cancelled. You kinda brought this one on yourself, my friend. Back when I was a nurse, a guy came into the ER for a stomachache. When asking him about history, he randomly mentions a fight with his girlfriend where she left in a tizzy and he fell asleep on the couch. 20 minutes later, when we see the CT, he has a satellite cable remote wrapped in a condom lodged in his rectum. I'm guessing he was intending to frame her. I didn't get to hear the conversation he had with the doctor. I was curious how he was going to explain why she was nice enough to wrap it in the condom. This has gotta be one of the stupidest plans I've ever heard. I'm a nurse, not a doctor. I had a patient who worked in a hospital as a janitor, so he knew enough to fake a bit. He was seeking pain meds, complaining of chest pain and wanting morphine. He was worked up for everything cardiac and was fine. Then he tried to claim GI discomfort when he was being discharged. Cleared again for everything. So he faked chest pain again. Cleared again. Now he's my patient. I'm a new face. He tells me he's having abdominal pain. I call the doctor, knowing this guy's history. He says he'll be up to see him soon. This patient wants a ginger ale, some stomachache. I decided to go to lunch. My coworker comes into the lunchroom disgusted. This guy had taken a dump in a basin and then dumped the ginger ale over it and tried to tell her he had fecal vomiting. He obviously needed meds right now for the pain. I walk into his room and sure enough, a pile of poop in a puddle of ginger ale. I told him I'd have to take away his food and drinks and we'd have to put an NG down. Suddenly, he changed his tune. He admitted to faking it. Why do these people do what they do? ER nurse here. I was bringing a patient back to a room who said he had kidney stones. I had him stop at the bathroom and get a urine sample. Dude comes out with the specimen cup that literally has a piece of concrete in it. Looked him in the eye expecting some sort of joke. He was serious. I threw it away and walked this foolish man back to the waiting room to contemplate his stupidity. When I was a medical student, I worked in the pediatric side of the emergency room, and we would give popsicles to all the kids. One afternoon, an 8-year-old came in with his father, and I asked what was wrong. The kid couldn't remember what he had complained about to his dad, and the dad couldn't remember why he brought his kid in. The kid's mom was a nurse, and she worked at another hospital at the time, but she was the one that would keep track of all these things. Anyway, after a few minutes trying to figure out what was going on, the kid asked, "So can I have my popsicle now?" The kid was 100% healthy. Unfortunately, we reinforced bad behavior and both the kid and the dad subsequently left with popsicles. Years ago, I had a patient who had been rear-ended in an auto accident a few weeks before I saw her. She had a history of lupus. She was decked out in the usual I'm crippled paraphernalia. Crutches, neck brace, elbow braces, wrist braces, knee braces, all of it. And she could barely walk. I saw her a couple of times and she showed no improvement. One Saturday I was on call but had to take a backstreets route to the hospital because of an event taking place on the main thoroughfare. I apparently drove around her neighborhood because, wonders behold, she was wearing old lady spandex power walking down the sidewalk, holding weights in both hands. I didn't call her out. Next week, she was back at the clinic with her I'm crippled get up on again. A few weeks later, I got a subpoena for the deposition, and it all became clear. I'm a surgery resident. When I was on my trauma rotation, we had a patient come in after MVC with question that maybe the patient had seized and that had caused the accident. So he's in the trauma bay and starts shaking. The trauma nurse goes, "Oh, this isn't a real seizure." And the patient stops shaking, sits up, turns to the nurse and yells, "You don't know a thing about me." Prisoner came in with signs and symptoms of a big stroke. At that time, the protocol was to get a non-contrast head CT to rule out a bleed, and then give TPA, a powerful clot-busting drug that's only worth the risk if the benefit is to mitigate a major stroke. So that's what happened. Later in the course, he got a little carried away, and started embellishing his story with symptoms that didn't make sense with his stroke diagnosis. And that's how we figured out he was faking it just to get some time away from jail. Can't say I blame him. At least he wasn't trying to escape. He just wanted to get out for a day, it sounds like.
What fact are you just tired of explaining to people? That I'm not lonely or sad, I just like to spend time by myself. That being deaf really means I can't hear you at all. All the shouting doesn't help me to hear you. The difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Any type of diet, plants, or hocus-pocus voodoo isn't going to cure my cancer. It's a chromosome switch, so unless they can switch my chromosomes back into the right places, it's not happening. That reminds me of how, Steve Jobs died. Apparently he was a real believer in alternative medicine, and then he, got a transplant of an organ or something that he needed, that he should have done at the very beginning, but then he wasted so much time on, alternative medicines that when he got the transplant, it just meant nothing. Correlation doesn't equal causation. I'm in IT. That does not mean I can single-handedly make a game or large-scale software. At the same time, I also cannot hack the Pentagon or release encrypted files from another hacker. Also, side note, while I was reinstalling Windows for you, I did not break your toaster and radio on opposite sides of the house and have no idea how to repair them or your microwave. Okay, thanks, bye. Going up a tax bracket doesn't result in a pay cut. That having the money to buy something doesn't mean you can afford it. Oh boy, is that a good one, and oh boy, is that one that I'd hear from my mom a lot when I wanted toys as a kid. As a speech and language therapist, I'm responsible for somebody's safe swallow to prevent aspiration, pneumonia, or choking. There is more to my profession than teaching a child to stop stuttering. Gifts must be reported to the IRS if they are over 17 grand. Gifts over 12.92 million in the giver's lifetime are taxable, and the giver has to pay the tax. They tax gifts to avoid rich people dodging estate taxes by giving everything away before they die. ADHD is real. Adults can have it too, and it's not cured by a belt, just trying or cutting back on caffeine and sugar. It's actually very debilitating at times and is the primary contributor to a lot of problems that adults with it struggle with. It's extremely hard to find the help you need past a certain age because even the medical industry has a terrible understanding of adult ADHD. And no, not everyone is a little bit ADHD. Parts of the brain are literally underdeveloped due to lagging behind while developing. It literally prevents me from being able to redirect my attention and tune out background noises. It makes my default mode network, the part of the brain that chatters when you are at rest not doing anything, incessantly chatter in my head all day, every day. It makes the part of my brain responsible for inhibiting emotions or thoughts extremely difficult. It's mentally exhausting. It prevents the part of my brain responsible for motivation from functioning correctly. It's not laziness. It's literally my brain not being able to communicate with itself properly to get me to take action. And yes, it literally affects my mood and my displays of emotions. It's not bipolar. I just can't regulate how I show normal emotions effectively. If I blow up at you when you make me angry, it's not anger problems. I literally can't hold myself back unless I am getting the help I need to manage the ADHD. And yes, that means stimulant substances for me. No, it's not an illegal substance. Yes, it functions similar to that, but it calms me down because I am chronically understimulated and my brain takes over seeking stimulation, hyperactivity, chatter, daydreaming, etc. Stimulants put me on even footing with everyone else. I likely try harder than you every day with everything I do because I start the race with my feet tied and a mile behind the starting line. So stop telling me that I just don't try hard enough. And please educate yourself. ADHD is the most well-researched and studied disorder on Earth, and too many people don't believe it exists. No, it wasn't invented in the 70s by a man who said he made it up. There are over 200-year-old medical journals detailing it. The grandfather of medicine, Hippocrates, has writings describing patients that are believed to be the earliest recorded instances of ADHD, and the treatment he gave them line up with herbs, vitamins, and minerals that tend to help ADHD the most. And that's from the 4th century BC. It's not a made-up problem from 50 years ago. That all checks out. I've got ADHD. It does suck some days, but it also affects people wildly differently. That awful poor planning on their part does not constitute an emergency on mine. That most recycling ends up in the landfill. You are not being environmentally friendly just because you recycle. Reducing and reusing are much better for the environment. Recycling is the last resort. Only one small step up from garbage. The importance of privacy, why governments and companies should not spy on us unless when the people whose data is stolen are not citizens of their country. And together with the above, not because someone posts things on the internet and has a public life, does it give others the right to interfere in their private life. That just because I'm black does not mean that I'm an expert or the go-to guy on all things African American. Seriously. Along those lines, I can like a woman who's not black because of qualities she has that have nothing to do with her skin color or ethnic background, or not like a black woman because of the same things. If she's from Mumbai and would actually listen to me argue with someone why Professor X could use his mental blast to take out a Mark II Sentinel and get me another beer instead of head for the door, why does it matter what her hair color is or where her people are from? She likes me enough to put up with my BS. Why should I look for someone that you think I should be with to make you happy with who should be with whom? Just saying. This sounds like a rather personal matter. I'm sorry that your mother is maybe racist and unable to see that you've maybe made a actual connection with someone. I'm not Chinese. I don't speak Vietnamese or Chinese. Yes, I'm Irish. 18 years of reinforced go to college and you'll get a good job growing up has led to an entire generation of adults who are on average more educated than prior generations when the number of jobs that would actually require those educations have not really increased in any significant number. So now, more roles that don't actually need the education can still ask for it and get candidates with that education requirement applying because they can't get anything else. Add on the fact that tuition rates have been increasing at a much higher rate than inflation since at least the 80s, while Uncle Sam happily foots the upfront costs and you wind up with a generation of people with significant debt making less than their expected income that can't afford to pay it off. Don't forget to add in that public schools don't, or at least didn't about 15 years ago when I graduated, have any mandatory classes to teach about loans in general, student loans, interest, etc. So kids signed up for these loans with only a very vague idea of what they were signing up for. And finally, even if Biden's debt forgiveness passes, which I hope it does, as it will definitely help people, it will still do nothing to address the underlying issue and actually solve any problem. It will just put a band-aid over the issue for another year. Now, I by no means have a horse in the American political race, and you're the one who brought it up, but I just thought I'd ask. How's Vote Blue no matter who working out for you? That you are responsible for your own actions. Just because something offends you doesn't mean it's gotta go. The McDonald's coffee lawsuit lady was very justified in winning her case. Longitude and latitude and GPS and how it simply would not work if the earth was flat. That you don't have to be white to be racist. There are non-white racists too. To add to that, 1, there's no reverse racism, it's just racism. And 2, just because you're black doesn't mean you're not racist towards black people. That's literally the point of characters like Uncle Ruckus. Stop setting yourself up for failure because you demand perfection. Actually accomplishing something to a B+ level is infinitely better than having not done it. Can't clean the kitchen until it's spotless under a microscope? Cool. Load up the dishwasher until it's full and run it. Way better than living in filth. Can't stick to a 5-day-a-week workout and super healthy diet? Fine. Do twice a week and cut out the 3 worst foods and you'll be massively ahead of where you were. Basically, incremental improvements in your life will eventually lead to larger scale improvements in your life. I once heard that apparently you need to stick to something for about 30 days in a row before you just start doing it automatically with ease. The vast majority of religious believers cringe just as hard as you do and wish the loud extremist minority would go away and shut up just like you. It's a shame that so many people assume first which religion and second that these discussions don't already take place within the communities of these religions. They do. The difference is neither side is smart enough to realize that screaming your belief into others' faces will never actually work. It only makes you the savage you think you are disagreeing with. And it really sucks that I need to extrapolate on this, because people still want to assume the worst and shout their beliefs into another's face. I mean, there are morally reprehensible people in any kind of group you can name, social, religious, whatever, but the fact of the matter is the world would be a whole lot better if people would just come out and say, yes, there are morally reprehensible people in our groups and we all need to work together to call those people out and hopefully make the world a better place, and we can all maybe Learn to tolerate each other just a little bit more than we have been lately. Censoring speech is the first step towards oppression of all society. That unlikely things do happen, such as people getting lucky or someone bragging about something unique. It appears as if lots of people stubbornly live under a rock and refuse to accept the fact that everyone has a life of their own. The 8 billion people on this planet do not exist as carbon copies of your life. That you can disagree with someone and still be friends. You can also have different political beliefs and be friends. Opinions are not facts. That intention does not negate impact. That touching a baby animal won't make the parents reject it. It's an old wives' tale / myth to keep children from messing with wild baby animals. I still see so many people argue about this. I'm not sure if it is true or not. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. I mean, the people that say it is true actually give examples. Feminism is equality and against bias towards genders. It doesn't mean to hate men. That is the opposite of the definition of feminism. I am Sikh, not Muslim. Those are your dog's nipples. Yes, male dogs have nipples. The laws of supply and demand apply to labor, so you can't import millions of people without driving wages down. Han shot first. It's been ages since I saw the original cut of Star Wars, and it's so weird that they change it with each iteration that they decide to pump out or whatever, but it makes him a more interesting character if he shoots first, rather than waiting to be attacked. Micro pigs aren't real. It's just a starved pot-belly pig. Gonna get buried, but just chipping in, there is a massive difference to listening and waiting your turn to talk. Most people are waiting for their turn to talk, interrupt soon as a thought comes into their mind, or only latch onto one small thing that they heard and ignore the rest. The worst people are those who just try to drown out your voice by talking louder than anyone else. Listening is a valuable skill. Please learn to listen. That innocent until proven guilty is a legal concept. It means while being tried in a court of law, the judge or jury need to be unbiased and believe the person is innocent until the burden of proof is met. It does not mean the person is actually innocent. If I see someone commit a crime, I don't have to say they are innocent until convicted. I know they did it. A person can absolutely be guilty, but the legal burden was not met. And again, that does not mean they should be treated as though they did not do it outside of the justice system. Just because I'm old doesn't mean I'm out of touch. My son's trans and I've supported his transition. Also came out as bisexual at the age of 58. A lot of us old folks want to see the change you kids are going to make in the world. Politics isn't simple like you think it is. There are no simple answers. That all dating apps are designed to get money from you and that they don't care if you find anyone. They prey on those who are weak, who think spending money will help them find dates. Dating apps have ruined people's self-esteem and dating in general. It's true, a large swath of society needs to readjust and, try and take part in actual human contact to find partners again. If you regularly use dating apps, that's fine, but honestly, it doesn't really prepare you for, conversational skills in person or anything like that, which are very, very critical. Every generation has its share of greedy buttholes and grifters. Things aren't going to magically get better when the boomers all die. That the 2020 election was fair and not stolen. Electric cars won't save us from climate change, and we've been duped by car manufacturers. We need walkable cities yesterday. That just because a research study reports a statistic does not mean it is generalizable to the entire population. Most research studies are done on a population in a given area. The area then are typically randomized to get a sample from that population. That means that if a researcher is doing a study and uses one specific country, state, job, place, or whatever, they are only studying that specific population, which implies that if you were to do that study on a different population in a different place, there could be very different results based on the different demographics of that specific population. For example, if you were to do a study on the average political beliefs of people in the southern states, you cannot imply that the results would be the same as the average political beliefs of people in the northern states. Most people who perform research or are knowledgeable and have taken a class in statistics are aware of this. However, I know many people who just raffle off a statistic that clearly supports their specific opinion or belief, without looking at all the other research that may have disproven that said finding, or they don't realize that the one statistic is only specific to one population.
Nuclear energy is a waste of time and a colossal waste of money.
Pollution from coal power kills more people every day than nuclear has in its entire history. That life isn't a bunch of dichotomies and extremes. I can consider Donald Trump to be the worst president in U.S. history and still not vote for or even like Joe Biden. I can recognize that Maryland's SB 0001 is a dumb law and still not be a long-range killing device lover. I can prefer to eat my pizza without pineapples and still not think that pepperoni is the only acceptable pizza topping.
This is literally the best answer in this entire goddamn thread. My god, this topic is a bit of a down and I have to comment on every now and then because a lot of this stuff is just like opinion-based, or they're only saying 1 to maybe 8 word answers that I don't really want to extrapolate on. That anxiety is not just all in your head. Yes, there is a damn rule that stops everybody from playing basketball, or more accurately, there's no rule that allows it, and basketball rules are a list of what you can do. Anything not included is prohibited.
The ducks at the park are free.
Because my dad is a math teacher doesn't make me automatically good at maths.
So, my name is Maurice, and ever since Madagascar came out, I keep having to explain to people that Mort is the one with the foot fetish, not Maurice. Your migraine headache is not a migraine. When I have a migraine, my head doesn't just hurt. My pupils dilate so uncontrollably, I effectively go blind, vomit uncontrollably, piercing neck pain, and occasionally I hallucinate. Yeah, I cannot stress enough how, different a migraine is to a headache. It's true. Frankenstein was the goddamn doctor! There is a difference between an excuse and an explanation. Also, that most times, effect carries more weight than intent. That first part, right? So I'll mess up in some way and I'll be like, yeah, totally my fault, I did this and that, and they'll be like, no, stop making excuses. Like, what are you talking about? I'm taking the blame. I'm just explaining how it happened. The phrase is, I couldn't care less. Saying, I could care less opposes the point you are trying to make. That not every evergreen tree is a pine tree. Some of them are spruce, cedar, fir, or even tamaracks. Homeless and unhoused can't just get a job. There's so many factors that are unaddressed in that ignorance. Atheism is not Satanism. If I don't believe in your imaginary friend, why would I believe in your imaginary enemy? The left lane is for passing, not cruising.
The president doesn't control the gas prices.
That is absolutely true. And yet the decisions made by an incompetent, quote-unquote, leader of the free world can ripple and change the world exponentially. Frankly, I just wish it was never always down to some stupid two-party system. I'm gay myself. I get stupid questions, like if I have ever tried being straight, or insecure women who think I want their men, or insecure men who think I want them, etc. Rinse and repeat. It's not the most interesting aspect of who I am. In fact, I don't think it's interesting at all. I can't decorate. I don't know crap about fashion. I'm just a regular guy who happens to occasionally date other guys. Currently single. I'm fine with that. Now, just because the fact doesn't agree with your political statement doesn't make it any less true. Doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you are on. Just because I have ADHD doesn't mean I can't sit still for an extended period of time. ADHD affects different people differently. Well, it certainly makes it difficult for me to sit still for an extended period of time. The Dark Side of the Moon is a Pink Floyd album. The moon no more has a dark side than the earth does. It has days and nights, 2 weeks long. It does have a far side. The entire medical profession, or at least the 98th percentile, misunderstands addiction. Alcoholism, gambling, sex, illegal substances, overeating, even religion. Any of them. Doesn't matter. The medical profession thinks the reason the patients are addicted is, number 1, they don't understand the harm they're doing to their bodies and society. If we could just explain it to them, they'd stop. No, we understand. We're under siege with pamphlets, after-school specials, news programs, medical personnel telling us, plus a billion advertisements, MADD, and such on the harm it causes. Number 2, it's just a lack of willpower. No, it's not a lack of willpower. Lots of very high-functioning people in other aspects of their lives, heads of industry, CEOs of corporations, and very successful sports, football people also suffer from addiction. Number 3, they're living the dream already and just want to experiment to see how much better life can be. No, sorry, not that one either. Well, maybe if you're 16 to 18 and life is wonderful, that's true, but it's not true for anyone over 30 to 90 years old. For most of the people with addiction problems, life sucks beyond the imagining, and they just want to have the tiniest bit of control to dull the pain to a manageable level. Dr. Sarah.
Bob, I've explained all the advantages and disadvantages to you. I really think you ought to agree to the skin grafts to fix your burns. Do you not understand the harm that could happen if we don't deal with this? Do you not have the willpower to survive the operation and recovery?
Bob. No, Dr. Sarah, that's not my problem. My problem is that I still live in the house and the frickin' house is still on fire. If we go through the pain and expense of the skin graft, 5 minutes later, I'll be right back in the same circumstances that put me here in the first place. And if by some miracle you can convince Dr. Sarah
that your life won't ever change to get you out of the fire, they fall back on the,
well, then why are you whining about it? Why don't you do something to get out of the fire?
because, Dr. Sarah, my grandfather has Alzheimer's, my mother has stage 4 inoperable pancreatic cancer, my son, little Timmy, is severely autistic, and daughter, Betty Sue, has incurable Parkinson's. Which of those 4 problems can you fix for me, Doc, to reduce the stress and pain in my life to a manageable level? The entire medical profession doesn't understand that addiction isn't about the thing you're addicted to or the effect it has on you or other people's lives. It's usually about medicating unsolvable problems to a bearable level, and until everyone understands the problem, we have no hope of solving it. Why forums like these make me really angry when they just become a moan fest for people with insecurities, faux depression, and other mental disorders they want the whole world to know about. This person is totally right, but, everyone needs some method of getting their frustrations out. Both political parties in the US are just as corrupt and self-serving. Most, if not all, high-ranking politicians have lost touch with what it is to be the average human being. They pander to us, put us against each other, and pretend the other party is the enemy and they truly want to make life better for us. They don't give a crap about us. They think they're royalty and we're all peasants. When American politics comes up, I always think about the Stampy the Elephant episode of The Simpsons where it goes on a rampage and it goes to the Republic Convention Center and there are banners hung up all saying, "We want what's worse for everyone. We're just plain evil." And then it goes to the Democrat Convention Center and it says, "We hate life and ourselves and we can't govern." This one was honestly so hard to goddamn sift through because it was all just political opinions or people complaining about their chronic health issues. I was hoping for more scientific facts or myths and stuff that people come up with.
Redditors who work in the ER, what's the scariest, dumbest, or weirdest thing someone has come in for? Had a lady come in for shortness of breath, began to place an oxygen mask on her, and she yells, "I'm allergic to oxygen," and pulls the mask off. I heard the doctor laugh behind the curtain. Maybe that's why she had shortness of breath? Morbidly obese guy came in for lower right quadrant pain. I lifted up his gut and found his lost wallet. Solved 2 problems at once. 20-year-old male came in for stomach pains. Said he was hungry and hadn't eaten in 2 days. Maybe you should try a sandwich. I have a male cousin who landed himself in the ER because he thought that instead of a condom, he could put something tightly around his male appendage and it would force everything to stay inside. Unfortunately, getting it off posed a problem and he ultimately wound up in the ER with a zip tie around his male appendage. His nickname has been Zippy for 5 years now. So, did it work? My friend worked in ER. She had an obese man come in complaining of a rash under his gut. Upon close examination, they found several splinters. When asked, the man casually replied, "Oh, that must have been from the love board." So the crew had to ask for details. Apparently, the couple had to use a board to pry the man's gut up to get to his business for lovemaking activities. Well, there's an image in my mind I'll never lose. A girl came in saying she was miscarrying, claimed 27 pregnancies and 0 live births. Says that in the last 2 years since she went on birth control to help regulate her periods, she's had a miscarriage every month. We had to explain to her that she was experiencing regular periods. This is why you need to pay attention in health class. My aunt is a nurse and this is her story. 2 extremely drunk men come in. One of them fell down the stairs and somehow got glass in his eye. They had pulled out the glass and sealed the gash in his eye with super glue. They had to soak the eye in acetone to get it open. That's terrifying. I'm an x-ray tech and the hospital I used to work at had a lot of homeless people come in. This one man came in and there was an order to x-ray both his feet. As soon as I got to the hallway with his room, there was a nasty smell. I got to his room, opened the door, and almost puked. He was soaking his feet in water and it was the worst thing I have ever smelled in my life. His skin was peeling off and getting stuck to the x-ray board. I had to stop a couple times, but I kept my poker face. One case that really freaked me out was a guy that came in that was around my age, mid-20s. He was having severe pain in his shoulder, but claimed he didn't injure it. He gets taken back and gets x-rays done and finds out his body is absolutely riddled with cancer. He was given 1 year to live. The family's reaction to the news was so heartbreaking to witness and something I'll never forget. A number of things come to mind, but top 3 without thinking. 1. Man with a 10-inch cucumber in his rectum. Didn't mention said cucumber until the MD noticed a bump on his stomach. Still didn't say anything until we got a CT result. Number 2. Older man came in with a vibrator in his rectum. Wife couldn't get it out and refused to come with him. Number 3. Younger male came in with priapism. Urologist was called in to drain it. One of the most bloody, horrifying things I've ever seen. I saw him again 3 days later for the same thing. I honestly don't know what a priapism is, and I'm not Googling it. My mom used to work in an ER. When patients came in, she was the one who took their insurance, asked about their symptoms, took their vitals, and things like that. One day, she's entering paperwork for a woman whom I think came in for injuries to her hands, but I don't quite remember. Mom's taking her information, and one of the questions is the patient's occupation. The woman says, "Oh, I'm a stripper. I work for Dinty Moore." Mom responds that she had no idea Dinty Moore hired strippers. The woman says, "No, I'm a stripper," and gestures emphatically in the air with her bleeding hands. Turns out she strips the meat off of cowtails. That's apparently what the meat is in Dinty Moore beef stew, cowtail. I was shadowing in the ER once and this big white lady came in with this massive bruise around her lower stomach area. The doc asked what happened and she responded, "My horse kicked me in my pooter." And I just bit my lip and turned around to force myself to not immediately bust out laughing. Had a car crash through our ambulance bay, action movie style. The entire car was well within the building when it finally stopped. It was a 16-year-old kid carrying his 14-year-old brother who had been shot in the abdomen over some gang stuff. Many people had just vacated that area seconds earlier because there was a CPR that came in, and they were all in the trauma room working on that. If they hadn't been, then there would have been a lot of injuries. I used to work in the accident and emergency department in our city hospital. Without a doubt, the worst thing I ever dealt with was the police and social services bringing in a 2-year-old who had been immediately removed from his home after a child protection visit. The parents had stubbed out lit cigarettes on the child's eyes, on his actual eyeballs. He had the most horrific injuries, both old and new. I'll never forget prepping the child for surgery to have his eyes removed. The fact that any human could do this to another, especially a child and their own flesh and blood, is the scariest thing ever for me. Those people should be buried under the prison. Honestly, that's just awful. So we're going to take a hard 180 here and go back to something funny. Guy came in with a salt shaker lodged in his butt, said he was changing a light bulb, then somehow fell onto it. How do they always fall onto it? My sister had a patient who was interested in having her clitoris pierced but was afraid of the pain. Curious, she affixed a super strong magnet on top of and below the clitoris but couldn't remove them. By the time she got to the hospital, her tissue was essentially dead. The doctor had to scrape the magnets off as there was no other way to remove them. I'm a man and was born with all requisite parts, so you know just how serious this is when I say that story made my clitoris hurt. One time the news was playing on the TVs in the waiting rooms. The anchor mentioned a man shot in a gang-related fight who later died from his injuries. Suddenly, my parents hear screaming and crying in the other room. It was the family of the guy who got shot. They had not been informed yet. Oh, that's terrible. How is the news finding out before the parents who are in the waiting room? Come on, guys. I had a guy who put a flare gun between his legs, I guess pretending it was his thing, and fired it. 3rd-degree burns to the groin are not fun. Probably the dumbest one I've had was a husband and wife who rode in an ambulance together, both clearly drug-seeking. For whatever reason, they were placed in rooms across the hall from each other and kept yelling back and forth about what drugs they were getting. The ambulance was initially called for the wife who had fallen downstairs. No injuries visible or on x-rays. The husband rode in with them and checked in, claiming the wife had fallen into him and taken them both to the ground. The husband's only injury was where he said his feet had tangled in the steps. There was no bruising, swelling, abrasions, nothing. But he had clearly just manually pulled out 5 of his toenails. They were not contiguous toes and it involved both feet, just the nails. Emergency medicine is the daily interface in the process of natural selection. So it takes something truly stupid or crazy to shock me these days. Here's a couple highlights from me. Had a guy come in with a plastic hanger, the hook part, stuck in his cornhole. As it went in, it snapped and broke away from the body of the hanger. Next, the 50-year-old dude who came in with generalized abdominal pain said he had no idea what was going on. Super nice guy, talkative, very friendly. We do an abdomen acute x-ray and all you see is a massive set of batteries floating in his colon. Yep, giant dildo lodged way too far in. Off to the OR he went. Lastly, the nice couple who came in after a vigorous boning session because she broke his thing. One interventional radiology study later, where they inject dye into his urethra to test for patency, and the dye wouldn't advance, showing a stricture in the urethra. Off to the OR he went. One of the stranger complaints I've heard as a resident. I had a 19-year-old guy come into the emergency department on the night shift on 4/20 this year. His complaint was that he got high and he decided he should touch himself and his urethra felt harder than normal. Not his thing, his urethra. I got to the room to assess him and he was in the bathroom peeing. His poor girlfriend was sitting in the corner with her head in her hands out of embarrassment. He got back from the bathroom, stood in the doorway and said, "You know, I feel better now. I think I'm just gonna go home." And then he turned around and walked out. So wait, he just had to pee? I used to be an EMT, and one time we got called to a house in the middle of the night for a patient with belly pain. We get to his house and he's bent over a chair in extreme pain. We get him in the ambulance and start taking him to the ER. The whole drive he's letting out tiny farts that are deadly, also yelling that he just needs to fart. Can't we give him something to make him fart? The ER doc asks us if there's a possibility of a foreign body issue, and I say that I didn't check. The doctor sends him to the CT scanner where he lets rip a fart that echoed. He felt better and left the ER. They had to close the scanner to air it out. You know what? I appreciate that. I wouldn't want to be the next patient walking into that place. I have 2 friends that are nurses in ER. Friend A said that there was a guy who went in because he had a pickle stuck in his butt. Friend B said that there was a guy who went in because he had a pickle jar up his butt. Will everyone stop putting things up their butt? I had a guy walk in completely impaled with a 4x4 wood post. He was drinking and working on his roof when he fell off. His buddy got a chainsaw, cut the bottom off the post, and somehow the impaled guy stood in the back of the pickup truck for the ride to the ER. He walked in the reception area and said, "Hey everybody, I hope you don't mind if I cut in line a bit. This seems quite serious," and promptly passed out. He survived. I worked in an ER for a little over 2 years and as an EMT running 911 calls for another 2. I have plenty of stories, but this one's pretty good. So these 2 20-ish-year-old girls come in and they're lovers. Apparently they had been fooling around and one girl stuck a bottle of hand sanitizer in the other's butt. The bottle was about the same size as a shampoo bottle. Well, it got stuck, so they came in to have it removed. The doctor was able to pry it out of her butt and he threw the bottle in the trash. The girls were discharged and the girl's nurse, who we'll call Steven, and myself walk in to clean the room for the next patient. Steven says to me, "Hey, check this," reaches into the trash and pulls out the offending bottle of hand sanitizer with his bare hands. He squeezes a huge dollop of the gel in his palms and rubs his hands together, laughing hysterically. That was one of the weirdest. Also, once in medical school, I was doing a clinical at a very small 3-bedroom ER in a very rural town, and this giant fat lady accidentally burned her left breast off trying to pour a giant pot of boiling pine sol on the floor. First, the whole hand sanitizer thing, I get that you're cleaning it with the hand sanitizer after, but it's just gross. Second, burnt off? A colleague told me this one. Man came in with a major rager that wouldn't go away. Claims he hadn't taken any drugs, but I have no idea if that's true or not. Turns out he woke up with it, then went to work for a full day before coming to emergency to get checked out. I honestly don't know what happened after that. I don't work in ER, but in a hospital. Back in West Virginia, girls used to come in frequently for just a pregnancy test. Not like they sell them in the dollar store or anything. My absolute favorite was a 23-year-old who came in at like 3 a.m. because their sunburn was itchy. There was also a guy who had a baseball-sized festering stinky sore on the top of his head. He had had it for over a year and was just wearing a baseball cap and ignoring it. You could smell him from the hallway. A dude shot some kind of injectable Mexican Viagra into his thing so he could have some fun with his girlfriend. Turns out he basically totaled his junk. Urology told us that it was never gonna work again. Best part was, he had a wife who he had to explain this to. Finding out that some old dude with a part of his intestine hanging out of his abdomen that drips out poop all the time, and who's unable to get a hard-on without shoving a needle into his business, is somehow married and has a girlfriend while I'm still single as hell, was quite a realization. Well, if it makes you feel any better, he's probably not going to have either for long. So my brother works in the ER. A guy came in the middle of the night with a carrot stuck in his butt. He said he was walking in his garden and fell. Another was a couple who came separately to the ER at night. The girl had a heavily bruised head or something like that, and the guy had a crooked thing. Apparently, while the girl was giving the guy a little bit of fun, she had a seizure, her jaw clenched, and the guy panicked and hit her with something. The situation with the couple sounds awful in so many ways. My brother had 2 varsity football players, rivals from rich AAAs no less, come in with fractured arms, shoulders, and concussions. They actually had to choose between getting them out of their pads and physically restraining them when their screaming alerted one another that they were both in the same ER. Both of them had functioning legs and both were in cleats. There were stitches for staff afterwards. Don't you guys have other stuff to worry about in this moment besides your school rivalry? Come on. My aunt said it was incredibly common for people to come in complaining about terrible stomach pains only to be told that they had a, well, buttload of poop that they just needed to get out. I worked in ER billing, not the ER, but this story actually makes me incredibly angry. I had a less than 10-year-old kid's chart with codes for nausea, vomiting, and a broken rib. So I, being Snoopy and having time to waste, opened up the nurse's notes instead of just entering the info. Turns out the kid swallowed his toothpaste after brushing instead of spitting it out. Mom of the Year freaked out and gave the kid the Heimlich, to the point of breaking her own son's rib. An honorable mention goes to the lady who came in with her workers' comp insurance info ready to go for a laceration, which is pretty common. But in the section for laceration repair, the nurse had angrily scribbled through dermabond and sutures and whatnot to handwrite tiny band-aid in the box. Yeah, this lady went to the ER and wasted a whole bunch of people's time for a paper cut. My godmother was a surgical tech, and the best weird stories all involve things stuck up people's butts. Bottles of Windex, shaving cream cans, tubes for gerbils. Did you know putting live gerbils in your butt was a thing? I didn't know that. The worst part was half of the patients she saw for the "I shouldn't have put that in my butt" were repeat offenders. Then there was the older patient who called her in because he couldn't find his appendage. Turns out he had a ton of foreskin and couldn't pee. Mom had to glove up and use a tongue depressor to uncover the head of his business so he could pee. The ER is full of crazy stuff like this. While I was sitting in a waiting room, a man comes in, maybe 50 to 60 years old, goes up to the counter and tells the lady, I don't know if this is cause for concern or not, but I went to bed on Tuesday night and woke up today." It was Saturday morning, 3 days later. He was told to have a seat and I was out of there soon after, but I've always wondered what the story was behind that one. My curiosity's been piqued here too. Yeah, I'd be going to the hospital too. Please give me an answer to what just happened. A guy came to the ER with an arrow through his head. We thought he was wearing one of those Halloween props, but no, it was real. Watching the neurosurgeons trying to maintain composure when examining the patient was priceless. He went straight to surgery and, from what I understand, did very well. Yeah, I'm sure the surgeons don't have to deal with something quite like this very often. At the time, I was working as a transporter in the radiology department. We shuttle patients in the building to and from tests. I get a page to pick up a patient from our green zone in the ER, non-emergent. I walk into the nursing unit and start looking for the nurse. They see me and get that weird smile on their face. The type of smile in healthcare that makes you worry about what type of patient you're going to be picking up. I walk into the patient's room, introduce myself, and then explain we're off to x-ray. The patient is a very unassuming 20-something-year-old male, non-belligerent, and answers my identification questions very calmly. If anything, he just looks slightly red-faced. I ask him if he's able to walk, and he explains that he's having stomach issues and really would prefer not to. No big deal. I have him get his legs on the stretcher they use as beds in the room and wheel him on over to x-ray. Get him in the room, close the door, and go to fetch the techs to take the images. Now, our x-ray staff is full of seasoned techs with 10+ years of experience on average each. The tech looks at the order and tells me to wait around since it won't be long. Alright, no problem. The tech comes back from the exam room, super quiet about 6 minutes later with a slight smirk. She waves the other techs over to a computer in the back room, away from the patient, chuckles, and pulls the images she just took to be fixed up. Two of the younger female techs bolt away from the computer, hands to mouth, and slam the door. One of the techs whistles, and the older female techs, almost in unison, go, "Well, that could cause an abdomen complaint." Very visible in the rectal cavity was a large toy. Long story short, the patient told the tech that he had a new girlfriend and she wanted to try something new. Little do most people realize that it gets to be like a vacuum to get things out of there, and up it went. 5 hours later, he was released after it was removed, the old-fashioned way. Ladies and gentlemen, this entire video has been a PSA. Don't stick stuff up your butt.
Boys, be completely honest. What makes a girl go from a 10 out of 10 to a 1 out of 10 instantly? Was on a first date once with what seemed like a sweet girl, and she then bragged to me how she and her best friends would go to clubs and hit on ugly guys to lead them on, then laugh at them for thinking they had a chance. She was actually proud of this. Constantly complaining about everything and everything. There has to be something you enjoy. That, or never taking responsibility for your own faults and always having to blame someone else for it. My last boyfriend did this, my last boyfriend did that. Well, damn, girl, why don't you go back to your last boyfriend then?
Fellow men, please, you gotta stop doing such nice things for your girls. It makes the rest of us look bad when we can't exactly keep up with the standard.
I'm joking, of course. It absolutely sucks to be constantly compared to someone else that you are not. Mine is the same as another earlier comment. Had been seeing a smoking hot woman. Looked like a Robert Palmer girl. Then she kicked my cat. What was funny was Bip the cat then stalked and attacked her by leaping from a chair and latching onto her arm. You didn't mess with Bip the cat. He was my bro. 1. Physical violence. 2. Infidelity. 3. Illegal substance abuse. 4. Scientology. 5. Needless cruelty. Treating restaurant staff badly, dishonesty, manipulative behavior. I was seeing someone much more attractive than anyone I've ever dated before. She was pretty chill and interesting, and on our third date, we went to my favorite restaurant and she was rude to the staff. I was so embarrassed that not only did I break up with her, I went back to the restaurant afterwards to apologize. Service work sucks enough without someone being awful. I'm a little mad and embarrassed now, a year later, thinking about that awful date. You know what? I'd probably break up with them too. If that's your favorite restaurant and you know the staff, that would be super embarrassing. I'd be mortified. If they feel the need to do a TikTok dance in the middle of busy public areas. 1. Playing on the phone while having an in-person conversation. 2. Littering. 3. Being a crappy parent. No hobbies. I don't want someone who wants me to entertain them. I want someone who has their own life and their own friends and doesn't feel abandoned if I want to spend time on my own or going out with my own friends. Yeah, I gotta hard agree on that one. If someone doesn't have any friends or hobbies or anything like that to preoccupy their own time and they're constantly just like, no, I need you for company and entertainment and everything because I have no one, it can be really unhealthy for a relationship. Had a girl once who basically assumed that not constantly texting was akin to no interest at all. Any time after the conversation would naturally go stale, or after a pause in replies, I would get a, "What are you up to?" or "What's up?" And of course, I'd just be honest and say, "Browsing Reddit, haha." Like, there's only so many ways you can make one's downtime be interesting for a conversation's sake. Ironically enough, that was one of the many factors that did contribute to me losing interest in her. It is exhausting being someone's sole source of happiness and entertainment. I was in love with a girl when I was a teen. I was smitten. She was a 10 out of 10. She had a cat. One day, it made her mad, and she grabbed the cat and hurled it against the wall. I instantly despised her from there on. Since she lived close, I also stole said cat a few weeks later. She didn't deserve Muffin. I renamed him afterward. I don't think she ever noticed. I didn't talk to her anymore. Had a date a few weeks ago. We agreed to meet at a local restaurant that has 2 locations. She wanted to go to the closer one by the highway. To be fair, I was about 3 or 4 minutes late, but I walked in and she wasn't there. She actually went to the wrong one, but she got mad at me for it. I attempted to salvage the date and we agreed to order takeout and meet at her place. The address she gave me was wrong. She lived at Street Place, and the address she told me was Street Drive, which are about 15 minutes away from each other. She's messaging me about how impatient she's getting the whole time I'm trying to decipher where I'm supposed to go. I don't text and drive, and she got upset that I wasn't responding to her. So 1 gets upset with you for their mistake. 2 gets upset with you for their mistake. 3 gets mad at you that you aren't endangering yourself and others by texting and driving. One time I dated this girl I met from Tinder. We went on adventures like hiking and rollerblading, and it was getting a little more serious. We slept together after the 3rd date, and I wanted to see her again the next day after we both worked because I fall easily and become like monogamous after our sex. So we go to work, and afterward we decide to go to the bar with some of my friends. I wanted to introduce her to them and kind of flex, show her off a bit. We get there, and I swear to God, when she met my friend Jesse, she completely ignored me for the rest of the night and left with him. They ended up getting together and split after a few months, and she had the gall to text me to hang out again after. I think I'm still emotionally scarred from that. She was perfect with just the 2 of us, and then she had zero loyalty to me in a social setting. To be fair, I never communicated that I wanted us to be exclusive, but I still felt betrayed by both of them. That is now my biggest flag I look for. Yeah, buddy, Jesse is clearly not a friend. And to be absolutely honest, if I met a woman who then went on to try and flirt and have sex with my friends afterwards, I would be like, nope, you're a problem, get the hell out of here. Girls who think using an Android phone is a deal breaker. Saying really mean stuff about people they just hung out with. Inability to be accountable or apologize, being rude to service industry folk, no self-awareness, generally being a spoiled or narcissistic person. Overly obsessed with the devil's lettuce. I don't care if people want to have a smoke to wind down at the end of a workday, but if it's your only hobby and topic of conversation, it gets boring real fast. She continually tells me throughout the date that I'm small enough that she could probably bench press me. It happened. She wouldn't stop repeating it. It got real annoying real fast. I was picturing the pig from Duckman saying that. I can't remember his... Corn-fed. Anyway, just a personal thing. Is anyone else like really tired of the simping for like muscular women or like muscular characters in fiction and stuff? With the whole like, oh, break me like you're baited, I am the Batman, mommy, please. It's just so incredibly cringe. Being dumb as a brick. If she doesn't know what she's talking about and likes to argue a lot. The princess attitude in general, but most specifically when it comes to finances. Don't get me wrong, I want to buy/do nice things for my girlfriend, but I hate doing things like that because they are expected of me. I want to do them because I want to do them and make people I care about happy. The second I get, you can't afford me vibes, I am out. We probably don't have much in common anyway, and I want a partner, not an extra expense. Life is hard enough without a constant attitude and headache when they don't get everything they want. Acting malicious towards the elders, animals, or children. Victim mentality. Someone who doesn't take responsibility for her own mistakes. 0 out of 10 when the individual must have a phone in hand in order to showcase everything we're doing whilst doing it. Under the guise of sharing. Put down your phone when you're with another human being. Everything that was on the web will still be there when you return to it, and all the new stuff? Well, that'll be there too.
I too hate that. Am I guilty of it sometimes because, well, a lot of my work is online and whatnot? Yes, but it's becoming more of a generational issue. When she tries to make me believe that all of her exes were abusive, deadbeats, cheaters, and man-children, and she had absolutely no role in her past relationships falling apart. I mean, in all fairness, just about anyone can do that. Bad hygiene, i.e. bad breath, bad body odor, dirty fingernails. When they just trauma dump on you relatively quickly after meeting, I get it, and I want to be emotionally available, but sometimes it's just too much too soon. When she turns out to be actually just 3 kids in a trench coat. I know that's just an old joke in general with a bunch of kids pretending to be an adult man or woman or whatever, but I can't help but think, are they specifically referencing BoJack Horseman? Unapologetic alcoholism. I can't hang with a woman who regularly passes out drunk at 9 p.m. and then goes to work at 6 a.m., even if she's totally functional. If they use my gender as a weapon against me, like, why don't you act like a man? Or, man up and do it. Or, a real man would be able to. I have fortunately not experienced this directed at me by a date or girlfriend, but I have heard women say this about other guys. Screw that. Screw you for saying that. I'm part of a group that conducts research on psychology of men and masculinity. I know exactly how far this goes to keeping men trapped in the worst versions of masculinity and masculine behavior. These statements that are aimed at hurting men are just the worst kind of manipulative, awful behaviors, and most people don't even realize how bad it is. But it's like I've seen too much. I know how much it affects things at a societal level, not to mention how personally insulting it is. A vegan who looks down on and actively attacks non-vegans. Just for context, I'm vegetarian. It was hard enough for me to become vegetarian after 20 years of shoving chicken tenders and sushi down my gullet. Went on a date with a 10 out of 10 girl to a casual dining restaurant, and I dared to have cheese in my food. She scolded me, publicly raised her voice and everything. People looked at us to see what the fuss was about. The rest of the conversation, her body language consisted of judgment and eye rolls. Mind you, this was the first date. She still asked me if I wanted to go back to her place that night. It was a big nope. Oh my God, you cannot control what someone else wants to put in their body as much as you'd like to. You just can't. Unless, of course, I guess that person is killing themselves, literally, with the amount of crap that they're shoveling down their gullet, in which case, if it's not that, you're probably just a butt of a human being, or a control freak. Materialism, luxury brands, inability to have a philosophical or abstract conversation. Being a litter bug. When she says anything along the lines of, my presence is a present. Cigarettes. Emotional immaturity, inability to properly communicate her problems or feelings, inability to take accountability and remediate bad behavior or actions, narcissism, and all those fun dark triad traits, inability to take constructive criticism, the list goes on. 1. Star signs. Just don't. 2. Posting multiple selfies a day on social media. I hate myself too much to be with someone that narcissistic. 3. Live, love, laugh, merchandise. Basic. 4. Loves drinking. Personal reason. I'm a recovering alcoholic who's currently sober. 5. Likes having sex with people who aren't me. I'm just a monogamous person. Sue me. 6. Treat their family like crap. Different if it's with abusive family members. 7. Overspending on luxury items. I'm a simple man and a thrifty woman like my GF are a turn on. She finds bargains like bloodhounds find bodies. 8. Highly extroverted. I'm highly introverted. I can't be around people of any gender with that much social energy. 9. Overly touchy. Even in a platonic way, just a personal space thing. 10. Persecution complex. Just shows a lack of accountability when their crappy lives are everyone else's fault. It's 2023, sort your crap out, nobody's stopping you. 11. Born and raised in a religious cult. Another personal one for me, long story. 12. Ridiculously long acrylic nails. Other than getting in the way of wearing gloves for a dirty job, or the sound they make when they hit solid objects, I really have no other reason. I really like my back scratchies, but not when they draw blood. 13. Upspeak. Goes both genders. Basically, just a sign that your personality is undeveloped. Sorry if a lot of that makes me sound like a douche, but they asked for honesty and I honestly sat down for 20 minutes to think about all of this. Honestly, astrology is up there. Not like a mild interest or anything, but if you make real decisions based off it and really believe, honestly, the same kind of goes for any spiritual or religious stuff, but the people I know only do astrology. Probably the exact same things that take a guy from a 10 to a 1. Just being a crappy person pretty much destroys physical attractiveness regardless of gender. Yeah, I do agree with this person. It's just that people decided, it's going to be a boys topic. Yeah, got the boys in here. Whipping out a bigger Johnson than mine. Silent treatment and emotional manipulation. Grow up and talk about your feelings. But talk, not scream or yell when it's advantageous, but silent treatment when it's not. Take 5, have a breath, and come back and talk.
Racism, size queen, and serious substance abuse.
Ignorance.
Smoking.
On the surface, smoking and those fake nails. I cannot express how much I hate fake nails. Inside, aggressive tendencies, infidelity, lying, arrogance, and ignorance. So everyone here is saying smoking, but I do wonder if they consider vaping to be the same thing, because I know so many people who are like, smoking and vaping, it's not the same thing. It's nothing alike, and it's like, yeah, no, it's the same thing. Personally, I don't really give a crap. Narcissism. Oh, mate, I'm sorry to say, but narcissism is like a freaking epidemic nowadays. Treating others like crap, lacks any form of empathy or any human decency whatsoever, manipulator, is a cheater, hates animals, dogs, cats, etc., displays narcissistic tendencies, being too self-centered / egotistical to the point you constantly put others down to feel better, continues to smoke / vape, just a preference since I don't like to surround myself with people who could give me lung cancer, is a far right-winger, yeah, no thanks. Went on a date with a girl about 8 or 9 years ago, not necessarily a 10 out of 10, but I was interested. Until she asked how much money I made. At the time, it wasn't much, maybe $40K, but she made it very clear that her 5-year plan was to marry a guy that makes good money, have a kid or 2, and be a stay-at-home mom. She was a pediatric nurse making $100K by herself. She was willing to give that up just so she could stay at home as a housewife / mom. Last I checked, she's still single. When they're gorgeous, but arrogant about it. Dated a girl that always talked down on other women or criticized their appearance. Even if we were just watching a TV show, I had to hear her dissect exactly which aspects of which female character's face she didn't like. Ugh. Nothing. If she's really a 10 out of 10 and is willing to settle for little old me, then as far as I'm concerned, I'll overlook the whole serial killer thing. I mean, she's a 10, right? Who am I to judge? No amount of pretty is worth 1 ounce of drama. Women who throw food or drink containers out of the car. You know, I totally get it. It's relevant to what your principles are, what you respect, what you don't respect, your likes and dislikes, whatever. But a lot of these, have really not even been relevant to gender or anything. I was really expecting, like, right off the bat, if she treats me like crap and then blames her period or something like that, that is something that is only relevant to women. She didn't like dogs, particularly my Labrador, objecting to him being inside the house and sleeping at the foot of my bed on the floor. Said it was either him or her sleeping outside. I gave her a blanket to keep warm. Constantly talking about other people's business or regularly saying bad things about people when they are not around. I understand a little gossip here and there, but it is repulsive to me when someone constantly talks about someone else's life in a harsh or judgmental way. Main character syndrome, turning every interaction into something about themselves. Announcing that they strive to become an influencer. Talking about other guys' peckers and past SX lives. Biggest turnoff for me. I keep my past in the past and I don't talk about my experiences with other women to them. Keep it classy. Septum piercings. I completely get that one. Septum piercings are such a hit or miss look depending on the person. Realistically, nothing. Every single person who has weighed in on this has lied to you. Once you breach a certain level of hot, basically, anything goes. You'll ignore as many red flags as you need. You'll start making excuses for behaviors you despise and make excuses for why you've done so. Desire drives people to every compromise you can think of, and we're all capable of doing horrible things to ourselves for someone we think deserves it. You know, personally, I actually do agree with this one. I have seen people fall over themselves for a pretty face and just go against the things that, as far as I knew about them, they believed quite strongly in. But then pretty lady walks in. Whenever a really pretty lady talks to me and is very clear that she knows how pretty she is and she thinks she can basically get me to say or do whatever she wants, it immediately turns me off, to be honest, because I don't know, I hate giving things to people who expect it. And yes, that does in fact include gratification. Bad manners. Being a Disney adult. Assuming I can read their mind. If you can't handle me at my worst, then you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best. Ooh, I hate that too. I hate that so goddamn much. Everything about that saying I despise. Telling stories about how she completely ruined someone's day in a personal and targeted way for minorly inconveniencing her in the course of doing their goddamn job. No, I am not impressed at how petty you are prepared to be to someone who made a minor mistake. If she's that hot, nothing could do it instantly, short of witnessing her murder someone. Instead, it will be a gradual process as the brain starts doing the thinking again. Any variation of the "you should already know" / "I shouldn't have to tell you why." I'm not a psychic. I'm not here to play a goddamn guessing game. If you're incapable of having a rational, grown-up conversation about your feelings, I'm out. Played that game too many times and I'm sick of it. One word replies. When I was on dating apps, I saw that a bunch where it'd be like, I love engaging good conversation. And it's like you attempt to have a conversation with them about something, but they don't do anything to actually move the conversation along or expand upon it. They just use one-word replies. Yeah, I agree with that. It's infuriating. Constantly throwing pity parties. Not a dude, but I am bi/pan. So number 1, hard illegal substances. Number 2, cheating. Number 3, putting the toilet paper roll on backwards. Don't tell me there isn't a right way, because there absolutely is. Number 4, saying things like, I'm not like other girls, or girls just don't like me for some reason. I get along better with guys. Crystals and horoscopes. I think I've actually seen too many people poo-poo on like astrology or tarot. Like, I don't put much stock in it. I know how to read a tarot and stuff like that. It's just a fun thing to do. I think people probably think that the people who actually like that stuff take it more seriously than they actually do. And if they do take it that seriously, then yeah, I kind of get being a bit annoyed by it. Breathing with their mouth open. Ghetto talk / slang. I was dating this girl for a while until one date while we were driving back from the restaurant, she opened a chocolate bar and threw the paper through the window. Getting hit with a frying pan? That one does indeed suck. Herpes. When they act like they're doing you a favor by letting you have sex with them. When she pees on your floor and vomits in your bed. Being with a chick that was a 10 when I was 19 only lasted 6 months because she always told me to open up to her and be emotional. Then when I went through some hard times and finally opened up and she started making fun of me and calling me a lady's nether regions and whatnot. Knew she was mentally unstable from then on. Once we broke up, she did the old I tried to self-delete myself because I can't live without you. Psychopath. Too much makeup and wearing revealing clothes all the time. I want a girl who is proud of their natural beauty. Fake trendy accent. I still get accused of that every once in a blue moon. No sense of humor. Burps and farts. Bare feet on car dashboard. I imagine this person did not enjoy Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Nonetheless, I agree.
Doctors of Reddit, what's your most surprising, I can't believe I'm having this conversation with an adult story? Paramedic here. Was driving with my partner and patient was in the back. Patient was fine. Patient's skeezy boyfriend was riding in the front with me and apparently saw a golden opportunity to ask a question that had obviously been on his mind for some time.
So, when cats and dogs eat grass, that means they have cancer, right?
No. No, it does not. Made for an awkwardly silent ride the rest of the way. Where did this guy hear that? I've never heard that before. Well, it looks like she's about 30 days pregnant. Congrats! How can she be pregnant? She's only around her brother. Well, they actually don't follow the same moral code as you or I. I'm a veterinarian, by the way. Thank you for the clarification there. Not a doctor yet, but I'm an ER tech for about 2 years now. Mom comes in with her baby plus 2 more older kids. Complains that the baby hasn't pooped in a while and won't stop crying. As I'm settling them in with one of the nurses, the baby is bawling, like opera singer lungs bawling. Suddenly, Mom whips out a white plastic shopping bag and sticks an end in the kid's mouth and says, "This is the only way she stops crying." Nurse and I share a look and immediately order an emergency x-ray on the kid's stomach. Turns out she had ingested a good amount of these bags and it was blocking up in her stomach. Big deal. Potentially life-threatening. When we confront the mom about her baby feeding habits, her only words of defense are, "Well, I checked all over the bag and I couldn't find anything on it that said non-edible." This woman's a potential danger to her kids. She has 2 older kids, meaning she was probably doing this with them too before. I told a patient that the 30 plus cups of coffee he was drinking every day could possibly be the reason of his chief complaints of anxiety and insomnia. He said he wasn't willing to give this up or try decaf. That's an insane amount of caffeine intake. Like, that's not healthy for multiple reasons. When I was an internal medicine resident, I came across a very nice 50-year-old Dominican lady. She was well-mannered, but one could tell she wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. As I was prepping her chart for our first visit, I noticed that she'd been seen by every single digestive disease MD in our hospital system. Not only that, she'd had every single procedure in the book, ranging from endoscopies up both holes and culminating in an exploratory laparotomy. You're opened up to basically look inside you when we have no clue what's going on. All of this because for years she'd had one single complaint. She reported severe gnawing pain in her stomach. At this point, I should mention that she was Spanish speaking only. Not only that, she had a very heavy Dominican accent, and I was the first Hispanic doctor to ever see her. My first language is Spanish, and even I had difficulty understanding her. So she comes in, and after exchanging some first-time pleasantries, I politely ask her how she's doing. Sure enough, although she was smiling and said she felt well, she pointed at her belly and said it was biting again and asked for the cream to kill it. At this point, I got intrigued. Her medication list only mentioned a cream used for herpes breakouts. The previous fellow only mentioned in his notes that in every single visit, she only asked for the cream and nothing else. When I asked what she meant by the biting and what she intended to do with the cream, she very calmly tells me she intends to stick the cream up her butt in order to kill the bird living inside her. After delving more deeply into her story, it turns out she didn't have a medical condition. Ever since she was a little girl, she believed that after eating a whole quail egg, the bird had spawned inside her and gnawed away at her insides whenever she was hungry. After a short visit to psych, she was diagnosed with a somatic type delusional disorder. No amount of medication or psychotherapy will cure her, but she was still a fully functional mother of two who paid her taxes and had 2 part-time jobs. I reached out to every digestive disease doctor in our hospital system once more to make sure she never receives an inappropriate invasive intervention. I've been following her for 3 years now, and she's as happy as one can be, considering she has a bird living inside her. Why wasn't a translator brought in long before? Why did it take her going through every single doctor and a range of surgeries to finally find someone who spoke Spanish? While in dental school, my friend pulled out several bombed out teeth on an adult male. After the procedure was finished and post-op instructions were given, the man asked,
So, when should I expect my new teeth to grow in?
He was serious. My significant other is a med student. He helped to diagnose a 40-year-old woman who finally sought out a doctor after having open, festering wounds on her entire torso for over a year. The open wounds only appeared after more than a year of painful, visible lumps on her breasts. She had never sought treatment prior to this. My significant other had to inform her that her entire body was riddled with cancer, that there was no treatment to help her, and that she would be dead very soon. Her sister, who was there the entire time, began loudly proclaiming what a shame it was that nothing could ever have been done, and that hopefully someday we would be able to detect cancer sooner. My significant other watched the doctor explain that pretty much any other woman in the country would have gotten effective treatment at the first sign of the lumps. This was during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Guys, if something's wrong, just get checked. Don't put it off for a year. You never know what you're dealing with. Better safe than sorry. As a veterinarian, I had a 10-minute conversation with an owner explaining which side was the dog's left side. It's the left side. The left. I saw a patient who was concerned that she was still lactating, despite the fact that she had stopped breastfeeding her twins 2 years ago. She said, "Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and find my husband sucking on them. He says he's trying to drain the milk for me." I had to explain to her that breastfeeding her husband will lead to continued lactation. Okay, this one's just creepy. Medical assistant to a cataract surgeon here. If you sleep with your contact lenses in long enough, they will fuse to your eyes and you'll need to go to surgery to have them removed. Yes, you can go blind from this. For the love of God, don't sleep with your contact lenses in. Thank you for the PSA and horrifying imagery. Got placed during a rotation in the orthopedic floor of a big hospital in a rural area in Southern California. I was doing my rounds and saw a patient out of bed and walking around the floor following a knee replacement. She had a cane in her hand that she was carrying as a soldier would a rifle. I asked what she was doing and what she thought the cane was for. She replied she thought the cane was for pushing people out of her way since she's now handicapped. I mean, I guess that's one way to use it. I'm a pharmacist, but the comment still relates. Had a lady call in complaining that her husband's Viagra wasn't working. I then went on to explain to the patient's wife that in order for the medication to work, the patient needed some sort of stimulation. The lady just screamed aloud, "Me?" and then hung up the phone. Still my favorite Viagra story. The fact that you have multiple Viagra stories to choose from makes me want to sit down and have a conversation. My friend is a student doctor and is on placement at a small town's doctor office. She had a 70-ish-year-old woman come in with complaints of a small but painless growth that was visible at the back of her throat. Turns out it took her 70 years to notice her uvula. Yeah, that's been there the whole time. Client brings in her dog for a tick she tried to burn off. Looking, I see it's a nipple and tell her this. She says, "But he's a boy, how can he have nipples?" I say, "Ma'am, your husband has nipples." Blank stare, then light bulb moment for her. Not a doctor, but I regularly have people come in for eye examinations because when I take my glasses off, things are blurry. Often, these aren't passing comments during the exam, but the main reason for their visit to the clinic. Patient comes into ER, 19-year-old male. I'm getting his history. Why are you here today? Every morning I wake up and my stomach hurts. How long has it been hurting? All my life? Well, what's different today that made you come here? My girlfriend doesn't think it's normal. More questions. Exam by ER physician, followed by lab tests. The abdominal pain always goes away after he eats. Always. He wakes up hungry. He thinks it's pain. I don't know what to say to this one. Just eat food? During residency in an urban northeastern USA city, I was in a clinic. A very pleasant 50-something lady came in for a physical. Everything was going fine when she casually asks if there's any new vaccines out. She was up to date with everything, so I asked if she had any specific concerns. She was casually asking to see if she could vaccinate her gay adult son against homosexuality. Very nice, always had a smile on her face, even when I broke the news to her. My mom was the head nurse at a clinic here in Houston in the 80s. She worked for an old World War II doctor that had gone into private practice as an old-school general practitioner when he returned back to the States. Well, one afternoon she told me that they had a patient come in that was running a high fever and was complaining of pain in her pelvic area. My mom also tells me that there was a stench coming from the woman's lap that could only be described as enough to gag a maggot off a meat wagon. She begins to interview the patient, who told her that her and her boyfriend had been sexually active and that she has been in pain since. She thought that the woman may have contracted an STD and asked her to undress and wait for the doctor to examine her. The doctor arrives and closes the door, only to reopen it a few seconds later, mentioning about the need for fresh air. The doctor noticed that there was a discharge and began to question the patient about her sex life. Was it protected, not protected, things like that. According to my mom, the patient told her, "No doc, we always use a rubber." The doctor looked down, then noticed there was a small rubber band extending from the woman's private area. The doctor reached in with his gloved hand and pulled it out. What came next can only be described as a magician pulling the cloth out of someone's mouth. One rubber band after another came out over the course of the next 10 minutes. Finally, once they were all removed, the doctor had the talk with the woman about sex education, and that rubber bands were not a successful contraceptive, and not what they meant by wearing a rubber. That is just horrible in so many ways. Not a doctor, but a dental hygienist. I had to explain that brushing your teeth with Comet, the cleaner, was not a good way to clean your teeth to a 40-year-old woman. I also had to tell a woman that was painting her teeth with white fingernail polish that was a bad idea. A 32-year-old grown man asked me if the hot spells he was experiencing at night meant he was going through menopause. My mother helps the Amish get dental care. One Amish woman complained that she needed new dentures. When asked why she thought so, she replied, "Well, I've lost weight, and you know that when you lose weight, you lose it in your gums first." Doctors and dentists, if you're looking for a community to serve, the Amish can truly use your help. I could write a book about the things I've seen. Why would you think it would be the gums? It's just such a weird and random place. I was a newly minted graduate with fresh and optimistic views on my life as a doctor. Second week in came this old lady and her very dysfunctional family. They would argue and complain about everything, from the food, the nurses they didn't like, and every single medical decision we made. She was very, very sick, so her management was just as complicated. She had several children, and they all didn't like one another and would not talk to one another. Each time, we would have to explain a long update to every single one of them, because
They're entitled to hear it from a doctor.
one of these stories being sitting down and explaining why you don't give Gatorade as an IV drip. They didn't understand why we were giving salt water to her. The conversation with her son went something like this.
Look, she likes Gatorade. She's drinking it, so why can't you give it to her through her drip?
We explain why, and the son frowns.
But it's isotonic.
We explain again.
Yes, but Gatorade has more electrolytes.
We explain again.
Saltwater just seems to be too cheap. Can't you give her something else closer to Gatorade that has electrolytes?
This continues for 2 hours. Wash and repeat every day during her admission. Afterwards, I told my fiance. He opened up a scene from Idiocracy on YouTube, and I just sat there with my mouth open for a while. Yes, you drink Gatorade. You don't inject it directly into the bloodstream. Two very different things. While on dermatological rotation, a Middle Eastern patient saw me with what she described as some funny itching growth on her butt crack. Some quick investigation revealed it to be a severe case of genital warts. I explained the diagnosis and that it was an STD, until she shockingly assured that she was still a virgin. Now, virginity is a big issue for young Muslim women, or perhaps their families even more. But apparently that doesn't cover other types of sex, and therefore no birth control in the form of, say, condoms was needed. EMT here. I had a grown adult trying to explain to me that someone else pooped his pants. Got called out for finger pain at a homeless shelter at 2 a.m. We get there and the guy jumps in the truck with very mild swelling to the tip of his right index finger. Here's how the conversation went. Me. So what happened?
Yeah, I smoked some stuff and then I fell asleep in my bunk and I woke up next to my bunk and my finger hurt and there was poop.
There was poop? Did you fall in poop?
No, like in my pants.
So you pooped your pants?
No, it wasn't me.
So let me get this straight. You smoked something, took a nap, rolled out of your bed in your sleep, hurt your finger, and someone else came along and pooped in your pants before you woke up?
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't me.
My friend, I think you need to take a step back and analyze the situation here. My brother is a general practitioner in rural Tennessee. Enough said, right? He says most of his patients' visits go something like this. Well, person, you're pre-diabetic, have high blood pressure, and are complaining about joint pain. Have you been exercising and cutting out sugar and carbs?
Yeah, I have, doc, but it doesn't seem to help. Do you have any better meds you could prescribe?
Well, let's talk about your diet. How much water do you drink a day?
I don't like water, as I get extra ice in my sweet tea every day to make sure I get enough water.
My brother explains that that's not enough water by a long shot. How much sweet tea are you drinking every day? Those can have a lot of sugar in them.
Well, I get a large one from Hardee's or McDonald's or wherever on my way to work with my breakfast, and another one on my way home for dinner. Then I have a glass or two when I get home.
Well, that's a lot of sugar, and a lot of fast food if you're eating it twice a day. What do you eat at home?
I don't like to cook, so I usually don't eat anything except those Little Debbie snack cakes at home.
Those have a lot of sugar too.
I thought that all I had to do was cut out Mountain Dew. Now you're saying I can't eat my food or my snacks? What are you suggesting I do? Eat salads for every meal? Why can't you just up my meds?
I relate to this patient's eating habits a little too much, probably. I had to explain to an adult that you have to brush all the sides of your teeth. Like, no, just the side that shows when you smile is not enough. And yes, flossing is not just a thing for rich people. Patient comes in at 2 a.m. for insomnia, clearly tweaking her brains out. Heart rate at 200. Can't sit still, bouncing off the walls. I suggest maybe easing up on the snow. But doctor, I love the snow. I was working in GP and had a patient scheduled for an appointment. I looked through his notes to gain an idea of why he may be seeing me, and saw he'd been seen a few times with knee pains and shoulder pains and the like. The guy is in his 70s, so probably just arthritis. I'm thinking I'll do an examination of his sore joints and ask a few questions, prescribe some painkillers, and it'll be a quick one. I call him in and he walks in and sits down and is cheery as anything. What seems to be the problem then, sir? I notice you've had some issues recently with sore joints, I ask him. He then proceeds to tell me about his sore knee. So I check his knee and take a history and it all seems fine. I ask if there's anything else, and he remembers actually his neck is sore too. So I check his neck and nothing untoward to be found there either. At this point, he's like, okay, well, thanks doc, I'll be off then. I say to him, oh, good, glad we could help. And you have no other pains at all before you go? He then sits back down and tells me he's been having central crushing chest pain radiating down his left arm and into his jaw since last night, and has been feeling breathless, and when it happened, he had an impending sense of doom. I know a lot of you won't be doctors here, but I'm sure you all recognize the signs of a heart attack there. He had all the classic textbook symptoms. I called the ambulance and he was rushed to the hospital. Sounds like this dude was taking a heart attack like a champ. My dad told me about an extremely religious male patient who was concerned about his nocturnal emissions. He saw it as an offense to God and wanted to know what he could do to stop it. My dad's response? Well, it's gotta go somewhere, my guy. Nurse here, retired after 27 years on the job. The number of American 20-somethings that don't know if they're circumcised or not is surprisingly high. When one with urinary tract infection symptoms needs to be given a specimen for testing, I ask, are you circumcised? If not, I have to tell them to pull back the foreskin before peeing in the cup. The number of guys who have asked, what's that, is way too many. For the record, I can count the number who were uncircumcised on 2 hands. This one's from my cousin, who's a doctor. He was in his first year in a clinic, and people went there to have an appointment because he was good looking. Elderly ladies loved him particularly, but this is totally unrelated. And the worst case was when this elderly lady goes in with her granddaughter, around 8 years old. She had a severely infected wound on her head. Upon close inspection, he saw the wound crawling with small maggots and the smell was terrible. He was very upset, of course, and asked why didn't she wash the wound and bring her earlier. She said she thought it would heal with time and was afraid to wash it, lest water enters her brain and kills her. There was also a woman that took her 6-year-old daughter there to check why she still didn't have pubes. You know, old folks are supposed to be wise, but when it comes to medicinal stuff, a lot of the times they're very much behind the curve. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.